it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome one and all to a Thursday midday edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
How's everybody doing today here on this hot and humid Thursday in New York? It is quite nasty out.
Is it?
It's good podcasting weather, as they say. Very good podcasting weather. Good crowd in here to start things off. 521 strong in the YouTube chat, coming up on 300 in the Rumble chat. Let's smash that like button, please, and thank you, everybody. Let's work the algo today for the early show.
Damn.
Not as
Gonna be 95 tomorrow.
Yeah, it's warm out there. It is getting warm out there. Not only is it an early show today, but today is members only post game day. That's right. So once a month for members only, we do the final couple of segments of the show for members exclusively on a private live stream link that you got in the most recent post. So there is still time for those who are not part of the Cool Kids Club to sign up. You can go to patreon.com/do-dissidents. You could also go to our Substack or our locals, do-dissidents.substack.com or do-dissidents.locals.com. But if you sign up and become a member between now and when we switch over to that private Rumble stream, you will get the final two segments of the show today, plus you will also get the call-in Q&A. Yes, indeed. You will get the call-in. We will have a call-in Q&A after we do the final two segments. So we have a segment on Ozzy Osbourne. And, of course, the talk of the internet last night was South Park. The South Park premiere. We'll be covering the South Park premiere on the private stream. We will have a clip of each of these segments on the main channel. However, I can tell you for sure during the South Park piece, we are going to be showing some clips of the show. Yes, we're going to be showing some clips of the show over there on the Rumble side, since it will not run into automated copyright issues with Rumble. It's obviously totally fair use, but Comedy Central doesn't care. They copyright claim their stuff anyway. So really two really fun segments over for patrons today. And you'll get the full South Park review experience over there. We will have a version of that clip out for the general public, but it won't be as fun because we can't put the clips up on YouTube. So if you want to join up, patreon.com/do-dissidents. It's just $5 a month. It gets you access to the post game today, plus the after party Q&A, plus Film Club, which is going to come up sometime over the next week, plus all the other perks that we mention when we do our scroll. So there's still time to sign up, patreon.com/do-dissidents. But we got a lot to get to today. A lot to get to. Yesterday started off a slow news day until like 2 o'clock, and then everything just flooded in all at once. It became a very big news day. So let's waste no time.
We're doing...
Yeah, you're up. Yeah, that's your cue. Let's waste no time. 20 seconds silence. Okay.
Let's talk about the health benefits of different types of mushrooms.
Yeah.
As you may have heard, the Wall Street Journal dropped a bombshell report. Justice Department told Trump in May that his name is among many in the Epstein Files. When Justice Department officials reviewed what Attorney General Pam Bondi called a truckload of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein earlier this year. They discovered that Donald Trump's name appeared multiple times, according to senior administration officials. In May, Bondi and her deputy informed the president at a meeting in the White House that his name was in the Epstein Files, the officials said. Many other high-profile figures were also named, Trump was told. Being mentioned in the records isn't a sign of wrongdoing. You're already suing us. Back off.
Yeah,
the
you can tell
officials
they're very afraid of that $10 billion lawsuit. They went ahead and did another one.
Did another one, exactly.
He's their Darryl Cooper.
Yeah.
You know? They come at him, comes at him, they just do it again. Yeah.
Sue me.
Yeah.
Well, hey, and with good cause, because if all of these news outlets that settled with him hadn't been worried about him weaponizing regulations against them, they would have won all of those suits.
Right.
It's not like, oh, it was an open and shut case. No, they settled because this guy has made it very clear that he will not hesitate to use the government as a weapon against his enemies. So they're like, yeah, 16 million, sure.
Right.
You got it. The officials said it was a routine briefing that covered a number of topics and that Trump's appearance in the documents wasn't the focus. They told the president at the meeting that the files contained what officials felt was unverified hearsay about many people, including Trump, who had socialized with Epstein in the past, some of the officials said. One of the officials familiar with the documents said they contain hundreds of other names. Last Thursday, the Wall Street Journal published an article about a letter bearing Trump's name that was included in a 2023 birthday album for Epstein, which was assembled before the financier was first charged. On Friday, Trump sued the journal's reporters, journal publisher Dow Jones, parent company News Corp, and executives, calling the letter non-existent and alleging the article defamed him. A spokeswoman for Dow Jones said, "We have full confidence in the rigor and accuracy of our reporting and will vigorously defend against any lawsuit." Pages from the leather-bound album are among the documents examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein years ago, according to people who have reviewed the pages. It's unclear if any of the pages are part of the Trump administration's recent review. So an attorney for Epstein survivors claims that the Epstein estate definitely has this book and that all they have to do is subpoena in order to get this book released. Let's hear that.
To that book, because with your familiarity with evidence against Jeffrey Epstein, which you've collected a lot of through the discovery process, what do you know specifically about that book? Do you know that the estate, the relatives of Jeffrey Epstein, in effect through their lawyers, are in possession of that birthday book?
Yes, I know that the executors of the estate are in possession of that book. And I think that after they turn it over, it should probably be set in the Smithsonian as an artifact at this point in time. It's going to go down in history so that the world can see this book, and they'll know who were Jeffrey Epstein's best friends at the time, what letters did his family write to him, what other pictures are in there, things of that nature. Redact victim names, release the book, and move on. So that's it. Yes, the executors have it.
So you've just identified, not just for the news media, but obviously for House representatives who are now in a mood to subpoena, and also Todd Blanche and the Trump Justice Department, who suddenly are getting curious about investigating this. You've now told them exactly, according to your knowledge, where the birthday book is, who is in possession of that book. And all the House representatives would have to do tomorrow is write up a subpoena for that book, and you believe that it would be the lawyers involved would comply with that subpoena?
I know the executors' lawyers. I've worked with them for years. They're good people. They're good lawyers. they would comply with the subpoena immediately. It's something that we could solve this problem so quickly if people actually want to solve problems.
Okay. So this is not going away. It's only getting worse because there is clearly a lot of evidence out there. And there are a lot of people who don't like Donald Trump. Presumably one of them leaked this book to the Wall Street Journal. There's some speculation that it's Maxwell's people and this was a shot across the bow as they make a bid for a pardon or some legal maneuver to get her freed based on this non-prosecution agreement that Epstein originally made back in the aughts. Any one of these things taken in isolation, you could say, well, it says right there, it doesn't prove any wrongdoing. Okay, well, as we'll see in subsequent segments on this today, okay, well, what about the Epstein deposition? What about the fact that he was, according to more and more evidence, best buddies with Epstein for 15 years? What about reports that he and Epstein together had underage models flown into New York? You put all this together, his creepy comments about his daughter in interviews, his creepy comment about how he'll be dating a 10-year-old in 10 years. You put it all together, it's pretty clear that there's stuff out there that probably incriminates Trump as complicit in being a fan of the playground on certain occasions. We don't know that, but the more of these data points emerge, the more of a picture emerges. Let's put it this way. It's certainly a clear enough picture that if his remaining defenders had this fact pattern attached to any Democrat, they'd call it open and shut and demand that they be hung from the gallows. It's not even a question. It seems to be getting worse every day. And, throwing up Russiagate as red meat, whatever the merits of the case, it's not working. It's not making this go away. It's too foundational to the modern conservative movement. They cannot turn a blind eye to this.
Yeah. And, if you look at, take all that other evidence that you just mentioned aside and just let's look at the Wall Street Journal reporting in a very self-contained way. Donald Trump denied having written that birthday letter because he knows the birthday letter is embarrassing, if not incriminating. Obviously, you can't convict someone based on a birthday letter, but that's a clue if that is legitimate and real, which I strongly suspect that it is. And Donald Trump,
he
if he were
also,
really...
just to interject quickly, he also insisted that Bondi had not told him he was in the files.
Right. So he's just denying all of this reporting, not only this last one, but having written the birthday letter. So if he were really in those files in a way that was more benign, then he would just say, yeah, I wrote him a birthday card because we knew he was a partier. So I drew a naked woman and wrote this stupid thing. Like, if you had nothing to hide, you might say that. You wouldn't just deny it, especially if you're going to sue them over it. Locker room talk, especially if you're going to sue them over it, because if you're going to sue them over it, now if it actually goes to trial and you go to discovery, we're all going to find out whether or not you were telling the truth or lying about having written that letter in that book. So the fact that his play here is just to deny does not look good. Does not look good. And the fact that the Wall Street Journal doubled down with another exclusive after being sued the first time shows you they are quite confident in the legitimacy of their reporting. And at this point, there's just no reason to doubt that. There's no reason. I mean, anything's possible, but at this point, there's no reason to doubt the legitimacy of now two stories. Two stories. Both are pretty damning, both of which Trump denies. I assume the truth will come out that their reporting is accurate. At that point, what do you say? Now you're going to have to backtrack again. Where do you backtrack? You already denied it. You're already caught in now two lies. So, yeah, it's as if the walls are actually closing in this time.
It looks like they really are. So if you haven't already read Hillbilly Elegy, get your copy.
Yes.
Get some insight into
your
your
next president.
soon-to-be president. Yes, President Vance coming up. All right, but that's not all. That's not all. So CNN uncovered footage and photos of Donald Trump during his reported 15-year very close friendship with Epstein, which included him going to his wedding to Marla Maples and hanging out for many years after that with Melania before they were married.
Well, yeah, it is. Trump's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993 was dubbed the wedding of the century by the media at the time. And although we know that Trump and Epstein were friends during this period, this is really the first time that it's actually been reported that Trump invited Epstein to his wedding. This is, we should note, more than a decade before those first allegations of sex trafficking against Epstein. But as you know, Trump's relationship with Epstein has been under the microscope recently. Now, besides that one photo of Epstein entering the reception at the Plaza Hotel, we can also see him in the background of another picture. That's Howard Stern on the far right, along with Robin Leach from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And Epstein is behind them at the wedding, almost seeming to be photobombing them. We also found this photo from just a few months earlier. Donald Trump with two of his children talking to Jeffrey Epstein. That's at the opening of the Harley-Davidson Cafe in New York in October 1993. You can see Ivana there. She would have been just about to turn 12 years old in that photo.
Yeah, you can see Ivanka right there it looks like between Trump and Epstein. All right, these are never before seen photos, Andrew. I know you also found some video of Trump and Epstein that was from later of them talking that has also never surfaced before. What's that?
Well, that's right. This is from 6 years later in 1999. This video has never been seen before in this context. It shows Trump talking to Jeffrey Epstein just before models hit the runway at the Victoria's Secret fashion show in New York in 1999. You know, the only other video we've seen of the two men was 7 years before this. Trump is at the show with Melania, who is, of course, now First Lady, seated a few feet away from Epstein. You can see them chatting during the show as well. Allegations that Epstein sexually abused underage girls didn't surface until 2005, years after this video was shot.
Right, but this, of course, establishes them together and obviously very friendly in 1999. So, Andrew, when you get all this, and all of this, as I just want to emphasize, right, has not been seen before. So you actually called President Trump. You called him directly to ask him about this.
Yeah, we were not on the phone very long. I think our call was about 30 seconds or so. But when I asked him about the wedding photo, he said, he sort of paused for a second and then said, "You've got to be kidding me," before calling CNN fake news and then hanging up on me.
Done talking about Epstein for the time being.
Yeah, man. That does not sound like an innocent man to me. So now what else is out there that Trump might be worried about? Well, journalist Michael Wolff claims to have over 100 hours of tapes of the interviews he did with Jeffrey Epstein. 5 years before Epstein's death in 2019, Wolff, best known as the author of 4 best-selling books on Trump's presidency, began recording hundreds of interviews with the financier and attended exclusive events at his flat in New York. For years, no publisher or broadcaster has dared to touch the explosive cache, which he claims run close to 100 hours of tape split over 30 sessions together. So what kinds of things might be on these tapes? Well, here's a now infamous clip of Michael Wolff discussing the Polaroids that Jeffrey Epstein took out of his safe and showed him at one point.
And I can describe them. There are about a dozen of them. The ones I specifically remember is 2 of them with topless girls of an uncertain age sitting on Trump's lap, and then Trump standing there with a stain on the front of his pants, and 3 or 4 girls kind of bent over in laughter. They're topless too, pointing at Trump's pants.
Okay, so it says a lot that he's had these tapes all these years and not been able to get a publisher interested in them. But now, surely, there's going to be a bidding war for these tapes, I would imagine. So, and finally, Midas Touch somehow got a hold of some of Jeffrey Epstein's deposition, in which he's asked if he was ever with underage girls in the presence of Donald Trump.
Personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
Oh.
Oof. Not good.
Ouch.
Believe me, not good. Ouch.
Not good.
Yeah.
Screw you guys. I'm going home.
Yeah, they are desperately trying to change the conversation to Russiagate. And without litigating, I know you have some coverage on that today, and you covered it the other day. Without litigating the veracity of the story, that aside, it is very obvious why they dropped this now. And it has put a lot of the influencers who make their business off sucking Trump's dick in a very difficult position, because usually their audiences care a lot about the Epstein story. And it is very transparent the way they are trying to take the cues from the administration and push Epstein off the front page, but it's just not working. It's just not working, partly because of things like this. There are people who have absolutely no sense of moral consistency, who are just going to be like, yeah, hang Obama. You know, man, too much of Trump's base is deeply invested in the narrative, and I think it's a correct narrative, that there is a global elite that get away with anything, including being fans of the playground, that a lot of this activity is being directed by intelligence agencies, primarily Israel in the case of Epstein. And the more very clear, indisputable evidence there is that Trump partook of Epstein's wares, you're going to be down to just the dumbest of the dumbest of the dumb. It seems like you're almost pretty much there. Very much like what happened with the Democrats after the Mueller investigation dropped. Like, only the dumbest people were left after that.
Right. Yes. And, it's funny. I haven't heard the phrase Trump derangement syndrome in a while. I don't know if you noticed that. Haven't heard people throwing that around.
Yeah, very
right?
little.
Very little of that. Very little of that over these past couple weeks. Now, when it comes to the new CNN material and even this deposition, I mean, the deposition, if it's evidence in a trial, then it's public. It's just a matter of Midas Touch going through and finding it, right? I mean, it's all public evidence if a case goes to trial. So that could be where they got that. Now, in terms of CNN and their footage, those photos and things, these are what we mean by Epstein Files. So, like, in a sense, these are some of what we might consider Epstein Files. So for Bondi to say she has nothing, well, these are the kinds of things you would have in the files. Like, when we talk about release the files, nobody's envisioning a Google spreadsheet of names listed in alphabetical order of people who, committed crimes against underage people with Jeffrey Epstein. when we say files, we mean things like this. Are there photos of Epstein cavorting with certain people in ways that raise suspicions, i.e., at Donald Trump's wedding with Marla Maples? Is there video of him invoking his Fifth Amendment rights when asked if he socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of underage girls? Like, this is all relevant evidence. These are the kinds of materials that we would expect to get not from Midas Touch, not from a Democrat propaganda social media outfit, but from the administration who promised to get to the bottom of this on repeat occasions. So this just puts more to the lie that they don't have anything. I mean, you have, first Bondi says she has tens of thousands of things. Then Kash Patel says we have nothing. And now we're getting these leaks. Okay, so if these leaks are coming to the media, that means there's stuff out there. If the DOJ doesn't have it, who does? All right. And why aren't you going to get it from them? Like, it is so transparently obvious that this is a cover-up. They just cannot escape that. It's obvious. The fact that this material leaked to CNN shows that they're covering it up. Either they have it and didn't want to release it, or they know it's out there and they don't want it because they don't want to know about it, because they don't want to be put in the position of having to either release it or withhold it and create a scandal in that way. So, yeah, the more material comes out, the more obvious it becomes how full of shit this administration is from top to bottom. And no amount of reverse Russiagating 7 years, 8 years, 9 years later is going to change that.
Yeah, it's like Barack who? Like, nobody cares anymore. Hillary? The ship has sailed. People have moved on. There's nothing, okay, you're getting into more details about Russiagate. Everyone already knew it was bullshit at this point. Anyone who doesn't know it's bullshit is unreachable and is not going to be moved by anything that you release. Everybody else, we know. And the timing just makes it so obvious what the motive is for it. Something else that the Wall Street Journal article actually got into is why you haven't seen Bongino. Bongino looks to me like they made an agreement that he's just going to keep a low profile but not embarrass them by quitting right now.
Yeah.
Because the article said he feels like his reputation has been severely damaged because so much of it was built on demanding the truth about the Epstein Files. Oh, Dan, you just found out that getting close to Donald Trump is the surest way to get fucked because the people around him tend to go down while he just preserves himself and throws them under the bus in order to save himself. Oh, well, welcome to what's been obvious to the rest of us for over 10 years now. That's
my
Trump
guess is he'll probably
operates.
quit like end of the year, beginning of next year. So it doesn't look so obvious. Yeah,
exactly. It looks like they worked something out. You notice you haven't seen him at all.
Right.
He's just kind of gone underground. Okay, so speaking of somebody who found out what the consequences can be of working for a guy who really doesn't give a shit about protecting the people around him, Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon. This is Max Blumenthal quoting from a New Republic article. He told me he had like 16 hours of videotaping with Jeffrey in his vault, Mark Epstein said. That's Jeffrey Epstein's brother, of course. And he told me it was protected because it was witness preparation and it was protected under attorney-client privilege. Okay, so apparently Steve Bannon, after he got thrown out of Camelot, Dark Camelot, we'll call it, cozied up to Jeffrey Epstein and gave him legal advice about how to not come across as a fan of the playground in interviews. A little bit from an article here. Jeffrey Epstein gave a series of interviews on film in 2019 in which his interviewer said the financier and convicted sex trafficker was, quote, engaging, not threatening, not at all creepy, a sympathetic figure. The interviewer was the former Trump strategist, Steve Bannon. The Times also reported that Bannon told Epstein to, quote, look directly into the camera now and then so as not to come across as stupid, and advised his subject not to share his racist theories on how black people learn. I'd like to know what those are. Mainly, Mr. Bannon tells Mr. Epstein he should stick to his message, which is that he is not a fan of the playground. By the end, Mr. Bannon seems impressed. So basically, Steve Bannon coached Jeffrey Epstein of how to come across as sympathetic when he's being deposed and presumably in interviews. So there's been a lot of people demanding that Steve Bannon release these tapes. And finally, he actually got asked about it.
Steve, big fan of your show. Just want to ask, in 2019, you did an interview with Jeffrey Epstein for a documentary you're making called Monsters. That interview never came out. Would you be willing to release that footage, and why hasn't the footage been released already?
We're going to release the film, the 5-part series next year, early next year. Yeah. You're going to see it. And by the way, the entire thing is how the elites and the intelligence services are inextricably linked with, it's what Tucker said last night. You're going to have to name names, and you're going to have to understand how the elites in the world, but also the intelligence services are inextricably linked in Epstein's story. That's the key.
Awesome.
Sure.
Now, as many people point out, a better time to release that footage the next year would be now. How about now?
Right.
Now would be a good time. So Blumenthal says it is encouraging to see Bannon challenge to release the tapes, and his answer is not satisfactory. He has said he has 16 hours of interviews with Epstein. He should release all of it now. And Michael Tracy has been on this quite a lot. Good news. I just informed Ro Khanna that Steve Bannon is concealing the most explosive Epstein files. 15 plus hours of interview footage Bannon conducted with Epstein. Khanna says he will send my article to the relevant House committees with subpoena power.
All right, good for him. We'll get some new Substack subscribers.
We'll get. Yeah. I mean, this is a bit of a switch for him because he's been taking almost a trolling position on the Epstein files being a nothing burger.
Right.
So he's kind of switching it up now. He found a target that he's happy with.
Right.
He found an angle he can get behind.
Right.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the reason Bannon does not want to release this, we always want to be fair. I want to say, yeah, Bannon was in on it. I mean, I haven't seen any evidence of that. It sounds to me like these tapes are very embarrassing to Steve Bannon because Bannon, from the descriptions, is coaching Epstein on how to come off as sympathetic.
Right.
That's not very good for his career. That's why he doesn't want to release these tapes. But yeah, does that tell you something about who Steve Bannon is? This is 2019. People are well aware of who Jeffrey Epstein is at that point. Why are you helping him? There's some speculation that he was trying to get dirt on Donald Trump that way. But it doesn't really wash given the things he says reportedly in that interview. Steve Bannon is a fake populist. He loves to throw on the knee pads for powerful elites. He just likes to sheepdog people towards the elites whose views he's in alignment with. He loves elites. He loves oligarchs. He surrounds himself with them. He serves them. I mean, that's his gig, to pretend that serving elites, to kind of give some fake veneer of populist legitimacy intellectually to essentially worshiping oligarchs. He tries to legitimize the peasant mind. That's basically his gig.
Yeah, and isn't the documentary he was working on, wasn't it going to be called like Monsters or something?
Yeah,
I think
Monsters.
That was the name of it, and it never got released. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of hours there.
If you just look at how he responds there, it's so obvious what his game is. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, It's going to be, you got to name names and you got to show how the intelligence services is tied to the elites. He knows the language. He knows the language. This is his business. This is business. If he really believed that, he would just release the unedited tapes, right? No, he's not going to do that. He'll give you an edit that just shows some Epstein answers without showing his fawning questions. That's what you'll get from him.
Look, they are just screwed now. All of them are screwed because even if now they release the quote-unquote credible parts of it, people are not going to buy that they're getting all of it. Right? That's why I think, I forget which one of these guys, one of the MAGA-sphere guys, said, release all of it, and then if there are parts of it that are tampered, put notes on those parts of it that this is not credible or this is tampered. I doubt any of it has been tampered with. I can't imagine the Democrats would tamper the Epstein files and then not release them in the campaign season during this existential moment where Hitler's about to take power, but you're going to sit on the Epstein files. That makes no sense at all. So I don't believe they're telling the truth about any of this, but I'm just trying to follow along for the sake of playing along, just to see where they're coming from, just to see like what they're thinking the way out of this is, because I don't really see any way out of this. The only way out of this, honestly, and this is what's terrifying to me, is war. War with Iran.
Exactly.
That would be a way out of this. Remember Gary Condit? Most people don't remember Gary Condit. I don't even remember everything about Gary Condit. He was being investigated for the disappearance of that girl that everybody thought
his intern, right?
Yeah, that everybody thought he murdered. And then 9/11 happened, and nobody ever heard Gary Condit's name again. So that could get this out of the news, and we know what Israel's plans are. So that's what makes this very scary, because absent that, absent some Deus Ex Machina or a wag the dog, there's no way out of this. None. That's why, seriously, I would be very interested as the days, and I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think we're that far along into this, but as the weeks and months prod along, I'd be very interested to see what the poly market odds are of Vance taking over sometime in this term, because this just seems like a very difficult scandal to survive politically, given the pace at which information is coming out. I mean, we already had 2 Wall Street Journal exclusives. We already had leaks to CNN. You already got Michael Wolff. You already got Midas Touch publishing these deposition videos. It's just been a few weeks, and we've already gotten quite a bit, and we really haven't gotten going yet because the House is still stalling. They can't stall forever, otherwise they'll never pass any bills. They'll never pass any other of Trump's agenda. So they can't stall forever. Eventually, they're going to have to cave, because this is going to become untenable, as evidenced in our next segment, where we'll see some Republicans are already starting to be like, all right, you know what? Yeah. We have a career ahead of us. Our plan is to be in office for the next 40 years. We can't just fall on this sword and just fuck our whole lives up. So we're going to have to, roll the dice and hope for the best when it comes to these Epstein files.
Yes. So speaking of that, the Democrats are starting to realize that they've been handed the greatest opportunity they've seen probably in the last 15 years. Nancy Pelosi says, release the files. But you know what's funny? That's not what she said at first. Ken Klippenstein's been all over this. He actually replied to her. You called them a distraction less than a week ago. Let's hear this.
Again, whether it's Jeffrey Epstein or Alcatraz, it's all off the subject of what they're doing with this budget that is harmful to the kitchen table, meeting the kitchen table needs of the American people.
I want to make sure I understand what you mean when you say distraction. Do you think that Pam Bondi going to Alcatraz is meant potentially as a distraction from Epstein, which has not gone over well at all with the president's base?
No, I think they're both distractions.
She tries to bail her out.
Going to Alcatraz. I think she's planned to do that. But I think that they're both off the subject of what is happening, changing the character and the culture of America.
She gives her a chance to clean that up. She's like, do you mean that Pam Bondi going to Alcatraz is a distraction from the Epstein files? And Pelosi's, no, I think they're both distractions.
Yeah, the Crypt Keeper did not take the lifeline. Well, this goes to what you said, and I think it's a very good observation. The younger ones, like Kana, like Ossoff, they're too young to have been on that island. They don't give a shit.
Right.
The Clintons do not have the hold over the party that they used to. They're not tied into the fundraising networks the way they used to. They don't have to worry so much about that. Pelosi, I'm sure, knows at least a baker's dozen number of people who were on that freaking island. That there is no other explanation for whatever else you want to say about Pelosi. She is not one of these Democrats who lacks the killer instinct, who doesn't understand how to work the angles of political knife fighting. There's no way she does not understand the value of pushing the Epstein files. So why would she say something like that?
Because it would be too disruptive to release them from her standpoint. Yeah.
It would be too disruptive because she knows too many people
You know
who are
too
in
many
them.
people.
That's
Exactly.
it. That's it. The Ossoffs, the Kanas, if anything, if you're the young up-and-comers looking to get these fucking old mummies that you can't pry away from control of this party out, the Epstein Files might be great for you.
Of course. What are they going to do? What are they going to run ads against you? John Ossoff irresponsibly wants to release the Epstein Files. We need sound, sensible
but
leadership.
if they come out,
they can't do that.
maybe you could finally torch that whole generation and get them out of the fucking party and take over.
Right, but even at this point, they kind of have a get-out-of-jail-free card because the Trump administration is clearly not going to release them. So for the next few years, they just get to run on releasing them and dare their, the old guard to challenge them on it, which they can. How are you going to primary somebody because they want to release the Epstein Files? I'd like to see Carville in that meeting. This asshole thinks
There's nothing in those goddamn files. I don't care if RFK Jr. fucked a bear on an island. That don't win you elections.
What that got to do with the price of butter?
It's the economy, stupid. It's not sodomy, stupid. So Call to Activism dropped this. I did a little research. This does check out, and we have video. In a genius move, well, take that with a grain of salt, but all right. In a genius move, House Democrats were able to pass a motion in the GOP-controlled House Oversight Subcommittee to subpoena all the Jeffrey Epstein files. Republicans were blindsided because Democrats dropped an 11th hour motion at an unrelated hearing after noticing that most GOP members on the panel had publicly demanded the files be released. The GOP chair was caught off guard and scrambled, first delaying the vote, then trying to sabotage it by adding amendments to include Biden administration communications. Democrats called their bluff and agreed. Now, this goes to what we were just talking about. They don't care. They don't care. If you look at the people who were on this committee, it's Ayanna Pressley, it's Summer Lee. They're not in these files. They don't give a shit. Sure, release the Biden stuff, too. We don't care.
Fuck him, as they say, as Hunter would say. Yeah.
Then the GOP chair, Representative Higgins, lied. That's remarkable. Watch that in the video. He does. This is true. Lied, claiming the motion failed.
Yeah.
It's like he put on his dark sunglasses and tried to sashay out of the room.
Right. Yeah.
Claiming the motion failed. No, that was not an overwhelmingly yes vote. No.
Good old
Recorded
Clay
as the vote failed. That'll work. That's the ticket. Until Representative Robert Garcia forced a full roll call vote. Ultimately, I mean, that's just amazing that he lied about the vote result. Ultimately, the vote passed 8-2 after 3 Republicans defied their leadership and joined all 5 Democrats to pass the motion. Okay, so yeah, this video is pretty funny. And you're right, Nancy Mace looks like she wants to crawl under the desk.
Yep.
And now we will be.
She'd rather share a
calling up
bathroom with
Ms.
Sarah
Lee's
Jacobs than be in this meeting.
motion as amended.
Okay, so now this is after he tries to end the meeting. He flees in the first half of this video. If you want to look it up for yourself, he flees, but then he's forced to come back for the vote.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the, pardon?
The ayes have it.
In the opinion of the chair, the no has it.
What do you mean the no? Nobody said no.
Recorded vote, sir.
Recorded vote is called for. The clerk will read the.
I mean, that's just amazing that he thought he could get away with that.
The
And
ayes,
that really tells you how much pressure is on all of the Republican leadership to squash this.
He
Oh
calls
yeah,
no,
yeah, recorded as a no vote. Yeah.
Yeah, show that back one more time. One more time. That's worth seeing again.
No has it.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In
Yeah,
the
that's
opinion
him.
of the.
Yeah, no one else
pardon?
said no.
In the opinion of the
one else
chair, the
spoke.
no has it.
I win.
Recorded vote, sir.
It's like
Recorded
golf.
vote is
The
called
least votes
for.
wins. The
The
lowest
clerk will
score
read
wins.
Call the roll.
Wow.
So
Mr.
yeah,
Gosar.
so they had to call for the roll vote in order to prove that the no did not have it.
And it wasn't close. It was 8-2.
No, it's not a close vote. It's amazing he thought he could get away with that.
Yeah.
That really speaks to how desperate he was, which in turn speaks to how much pressure he must be getting.
Oh, yeah.
And all the chairs and leaders must be getting right now.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Biggs.
There's Mace.
Yeah. There's family
Miss Mace.
values, Mace.
Ms. Mace votes aye. Mr. Perry. Mr. Perry votes aye. Ms. Boebert. Mr. Jack.
Aye.
Mr. Jack votes aye. Ms. Lee. Ms. Lee votes yes. Mr. Bell.
You listen, Mace. You vote no. I'm gonna make you swim against Leah Thomas.
Yeah.
Aye.
Mr. Bell votes aye. Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon votes aye. Ms. Presley. Ms. Presley votes aye. Mr. Garcia.
Aye.
Mr. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Chairman. No. Mr. Chairman votes no. Mr. Biggs is not recorded. Mr. Biggs votes nay.
Well, that's it. That's 8-2. It's a blowout. Even Mace folded and voted aye.
Mr. Chairman, on this vote, the ayes are 8, the nays are 2.
The subcommittee
Christmas in
stands
July.
adjourned.
Christmas in July, baby.
God damn it! I'm gonna get a call from that fucking asshole tonight.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Why didn't you stop the meeting? Why didn't you put a stop to it?
Yeah, you could tell how fucking how caught off guard they were and how panicked they were with that when that happened.
So, according to what reporting I've seen, this means that this committee has now voted to subpoena the Epstein files. Now, what has not been clear from the reporting that I've seen so far is how much impact that has. You know, there are a lot of these procedural tricks in Washington and within the legal system generally. Does that absolutely compel the Justice Department to release them? Or is there a way around it? Is this largely symbolic? I mean, it looked like the chair was pretty panicked about it for a meaningless vote. So if there is indeed now an active subpoena from Congress that the DOJ is obligated to honor, it's an open question what they do, what happens next. I would imagine there must be a legal recourse for them to take it to court to try to not release it. I would think that would be next. But as I said, this just happened yesterday, so there's not a lot of reporting on the implications of this yet.
Yeah, we will have to see. We will have to see. But like I said, every time something like this happens, it just you exert more and more pressure to the point where how many Republicans voted with the Democrats on that? Three. 4? Three. Yeah. So there you go. There you go. I mean, the more pressure they can only hold out so long. They are all of these Congress people are up for re-election in 26, and as long as this Epstein stuff is front page news or even close to front page news, there really is no such thing as a safe Republican seat. That's not to say they're going to get wiped out entirely, but they're going to have to work pretty hard for every seat that they hold if this dominates the news the way it does now. And so, yeah, the more pressure they exert, the more of them are going to start to fold. They have to. They have no choice.
Well,
Donald Trump is a lame duck. These people want to be here. This is their life. They don't want to get
Right.
voted out because of this.
Right. If there's anything we know about politicians, it's that in the end, it's them first and everyone else second, and that includes Donald Trump. Right. If this continues to the point that Donald Trump becomes a clear liability, they hate him anyway. They all hate him. They would be very happy to throw Trump overboard if they get the merest hint that they have crossed the 50-50 line into it's more of a disadvantage to prop him up than an advantage. They will throw him under the bus so fast it'll make your head spin. They would love to get rid of this guy. They would love to deal with J.D. Vance.
Yes, I agree with that. I think that's true. All right, we got 2,046 in the YouTube chat. We got 532 likes. Let's smash that like button so we can get up over 666. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $2, says, rest in peace, Ozzy, Malcolm Jamal Warner, and yes, Hulk Hogan has passed away. At
did
the
he?
age of 71.
What, today?
Yeah, just now. So yes, celebrity deaths tend to come in threes. So there you go. John Olmsted.
Was his last word the N word?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, let's see. We'll have to check the record on that. John Olmsted says, "Gonna miss you guys again, but to answer last stream, I'm a forester. I measure trees for a living. In the Pacific Northwest. Bigfoot asked me the other day what the best way to support Shama.
Okay.
Bigfoot asked me the other day what the best way to support Shama without money or being in her district. Well, you go to the website, shamasawant.org, and find out. Just getting on the email list is a good first step, and then they'll let you know ways that you can get involved. So yes, please do that. Thank you, John. Brad Gilbert says, R.I.P. Hulk Yafidity, but thanks for the memories. Thanks.
It really does always come in threes. What's up with that?
It does. It really is.
It's very strange.
Yeah. I get nervous, as we get more subscribers, do we become famous people? Are we in that calculation? Do we have to worry if it's going to be us next? I don't know. Charles says, funny how Trump saved Hillary twice and went after rival Obama. First save for the primary cover-up and now with Epstein. Almost like they are allies. Thank you, Charles. Appreciate that.
Got a lot of baby going on back there.
Yeah, no, I know. He just freaked out for some reason. There we go. All right, what do we got over here? Let's see. Hillary Hitton. Earth is a literally hell, and the vast majority of inhabitants are empty vessel NPCs. The fire and brimstone myth serves to deflect the rest of us from discovering the truth. Thank you, Hillary Hinton. Appreciate that. Oh, George says early start plus post game and calls. Nice. They kept calling Misty Wisty Winston during her clips on the JD show. Oh, did they have the wrong Chiron up? I found it hilarious. Are we allowed to call her that now, please? Yeah. Thanks, George.
Not if you don't want her to track you down and punch you.
Yeah. Ken Texican. Thanks for the $10. Free Palestine, says Ken Texican. Appreciate that. Dedema, thanks for the $2. Nancy Pelosi is looking for the prostitutes pissing on Trump tape. She swears it's out there. Thank you, Dedema. Appreciate that very much. Ficus, here's how cynical the media is. They could have released this at least 5 years ago, earlier even. They're only doing this now to play politics. Well, I mean, I don't know if they got that. I don't know when they got those. I mean, they could have been given that. I mean, it sounds like the Wall Street Journal was given that book fairly recently.
You're right about the Michael Wolff tapes. That's what he says. He's been shopping that shit around for years and nobody would touch it because they're afraid to get sued.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. We will move right on along here. All right. Let's get everything in order. Beautiful. Okay. All right, folks. So this is kind of a sequel segment. Tulsi Gabbard has doubled down on what our friend and colleague Misty Winston has deemed reverse Russiagate, because now the walls are closing in on Obama. So it really is the bizarro Russiagate New evidence has emerged of the most egregious weaponization and politicization of intelligence in American history. Per President Trump's directive, I have declassified a House Intel Oversight Majority Staff report that exposes how the Obama administration manufactured the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting the lie, in big capital letters, I guess he writes your tweets now too, that Vladimir Putin and the Russian government helped President Trump win the 2016 election. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people, working with their partners in the media to promote the lie in order to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump, essentially enacting a years-long coup against him. And then she has a little Twitter thread. I pulled some pieces of the report that she published, not nearly as much reading as last time here, what the majority found. So the majority does find, they say this right at the beginning, most ICA judgments on Russia's activities in the U.S. election employed proper analytic tradecraft and were consistent with observed Russian behavior. The key judgments found to be credible include, number one, President Putin ordered conventional and cyber influence operations, notably by leaking politically sensitive emails obtained from computer intrusions. Two, Putin's principal motivations in these operations were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process and to weaken what the Russians considered to be an inevitable Clinton presidency. And three, Putin held back leaking some compromising material for post-election use against the expected Clinton administration. So what they find is that the Russians used dirt to undermine Hillary before the election, thinking she's certainly going to win anyway, so we'll put some out in advance of the election to sow discord, and then after she wins, we're going to save some of the dirt until after she wins because she's going to want to run for re-election, so maybe we can control her with some dirt that we have on her if we hold it until after she takes office. Now, they write where the assessments go wrong. In contrast to the rest of the ICA, the judgment that Putin developed a clear preference for candidate Trump and aspired to help his chances of victory, quote unquote, did not adhere to the tenets of the ICD analytic standards. The director of CIA ordered the post-election publication of 15 reports containing previously collected but unpublished intelligence, 3 of which were substandard, containing information that was unclear, of uncertain origin, potentially biased, or implausible. And those became foundational sources for the ICA judgments that Putin preferred Trump over Clinton. The ICA misrepresented these reports as reliable without mentioning their significant underlying flaws. Okay, so we kind of get the picture. We don't have to read all that. Free Palestine. So here's Tulsi Gabbard's press conference, which she gave. Rapid Response put out the whole thing, which is 10 minutes. We're not going to watch all that. Free Palestine. We're going to watch the first few minutes of it, just so she goes into a little bit of detail as to what the Russians had on Hillary that they didn't leak pre-election. So let's take a look at this.
Findings from the House Intelligence Report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts, like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers.
Yeah, so if you remember at the 9/11 commemoration, she nearly passed out. They had to throw her in the back of the car, right? And
then they
everybody
said
who
it was a
mentioned
flu.
that, yeah, they said it was the flu, and everybody who mentioned that was a sexist. And now, you know, she's revealing that no, actually, this was documented.
Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump. Brennan and the IC misled lawmakers by referencing the debunked Steele dossier to assess quote-unquote Russia's plans and intentions, falsely suggesting that this dossier had intelligence value when he knew that it was discredited. The intelligence community excluded significant intelligence and ignored or selectively quoted reliable intelligence that contradicted the intelligence community assessment's key findings on Putin's alleged support for Trump. Including this intelligence reporting would have exposed the ICA's claim as implausible, if not ridiculous. The intelligence community assessment omitted reliably sourced information, such as how some Russian intelligence officials were quote-unquote planning for candidate Hillary Clinton's victory, while others assessed neither Trump nor Clinton would respect Russia's interests. As was reflected in the ODNI documents that we released on Friday, multiple intelligence community assessments released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election.
Okay, and then she goes on. So, yeah, then she goes on to say what she essentially released the 2 days prior, or the day prior, whatever it was, which we covered on, I believe, what was that, Sunday night show? Yeah. So nothing new, really, beyond that point. So I just want to give you an idea of how easy it is for Obama, who's a much smarter man than I am, to concoct a defense of this. They could just say, well, we know that Russia thought it was an inevitability that Clinton would win, and so they made an effort to undermine her in advance of the vote to weaken her going in to office. But they did that so much that they accidentally tipped the scales to Trump, and Trump ended up winning. So whether that was their original intention, they had the effect of helping Trump win. Now, Obama's a much better bullshitter than I am. He bullshitted his way to be the most powerful man in the world for 8 years, so I'm sure he could do even better than that. But that's a bullshit story that I could give you. Yeah, well, that wasn't the initial finding. We found that they were just trying to weaken her because they thought she was going to win anyway, so they dumped some shit in advance of the campaign to weaken her as a candidate and as an incoming president. And then we saved some dirt on her to blackmail her once she got in office so that she would be more friendly to Russia. Turns out they did too good a job undermining her to the point where she lost. So the net effect is that they helped Trump and hurt her. That's all they have to say. That's all they have to say to, and they don't even have to say that, but if they wanted to put a clean face on what their actions are, that's certainly enough to fend off what is a ridiculous charge here of treasonous conspiracy, which here Tulsi doubles down on camera.
Any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just to, two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I'm not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
So as Russell said last time, you know, whatever she's saying here, it's nearly impossible to prove intent in a circumstance like this, and especially in this one where I just read you a paragraph from the document that she released as part of her case, which says that the IC was confident in most of their findings, including that Putin disrupted the election to undermine Clinton, not necessarily with the intention of tipping it to Trump, but with the intention of weakening her going into what is usually a honeymoon period. Now, once again, you can look at what Obama did and say that, yeah, they obviously cooked the books. They obviously tried to get as much mileage out of what was ultimately, I think, a pretty insignificant story for the purpose of undermining Donald Trump. But you have to do a lot better than that to prove treason. Like, it's so comical what these people are saying. Like, they understand the seriousness of the accusation that they're making? Do you understand how destabilizing it is to forget about our like political system, how destabilizing it is to society to very haphazardly make accusations of treason against people? You know, the penalty for treason is, so like it's a very, very serious thing to say that. You don't just say that casually in order to gin up a social media frenzy if you have anything resembling a conscience, which of course none of these people do. So here's Michael Tracy. Michael Tracy responded to this. Now, Michael Tracy was one of the core Russiagate skeptics in the beginning. It was Tracy, it was Greenwald, it was Taibbi, it was Mate, it was Jimmy. Jimmy doesn't really write, but it was, all of these indie media people who were leading the charge against what was an obvious bullshit conspiracy theory, Russiagate. Michael Tracy was one of them. And so even he is not buying this. He's not biting at this. He says Barack Obama never claimed that U.S. voting systems were tampered with by Russian hackers in the 2016 election. In fact, he said the complete opposite at a press conference on December 16th, 2016. So the week after he apparently spiked the ICA that was soft on Russia and ordered one that was tougher on Russia, he goes to the podium and he says the following.
For the public that there was not, I can assure the public that there was not the kind of tampering with the voting process that was of concern and will continue to be of concern going forward, that the votes that were cast were counted. They were counted appropriately. We have not seen evidence of machines being tampered with. So that assurance I can provide.
No, at the time, remember, Barack Obama was obsessed with the peaceful transfer of power because as a narcissist, he is concerned first and foremost with his legacy. So Trump wins. We have to make sure, we don't have a chaotic transition. And so, my job, constitutional law professor turned president, is to secure the peaceful transfer of power. So this is part of what got him to go along with Russiagate, because at the time he was saying things like this, the Clinton campaign was screaming that Russia stole the election, which in my opinion probably had a lot to do with him ordering a new report just to get some of them off of his ass, because he remembers, and he says it in this press conference, he took a lot of criticism for not doing more to stop the quote-unquote Russian interference, with what had been shutting down Facebook, shutting down social media. Like
that crazy bitch called me 3 a.m, screamed Russia and hung up.
Exactly, yeah. Like the Russian interference was posting propaganda on Facebook, which once again, part of why I never responded to the Russiagate hysteria that the Democrats were pushing is, as an American, I have the right to read materials on social media. It doesn't matter to me whether a Russian posted a meme or a guy from Kansas posted a meme. That's information. I have the right to read it. I have the right to make of it what I will. Now, if you want to tell Russia they shouldn't be doing that, you have that's your right to do, but that doesn't have implications for the other candidate, and it doesn't have implications for what I decide. Like, I'm entitled to information, right? And that's all it was. And you had the Democrats bitching that the Russians told them things that the media wouldn't. Well, I'm sorry. That's democracy. That's free speech. That's your right to gather as much information as you want and parse out the truth from the bullshit. What are you going to outlaw bullshit? I mean, the First Amendment that protects people's right to bullshit. All right. So anyway, Tracy goes on. Obama's public statements are completely consistent with the December 8th, 2016 PDB document that Tulsi Gabbard just released and then idiotically proceeded to scream treason about in a transparent attempt to take political heat off of Trump for the Epstein fiasco. Yes. So Michael Tracy is a guy who was very, very critical of Russiagate and a guy who is oddly dismissive of the Epstein files. And even he is saying this is a clear distraction from the Epstein files. And also to prove that she's a loyal Trump toady after Trump repeatedly humiliated her last month. RE, the pre-war Iran intelligence, after which she proceeded to humiliate herself by fudging intelligence to justify Trump's maniacal drive for a joint U.S.-Israeli bombing campaign. It was exactly the kind of aggressive military action that Tulsi Gabbard not only opposed in the past, but crafted her entire political identity around opposing, just a complete and total humiliation on every possible level. I would agree with that. This is later in the tweet. So now she randomly dumps this trove of 2016 Russian interference documents to Fox News in a clumsily concocted PR scheme. Then she jumps on Hannity to accuse Obama of treason, laughable, and pretends Obama could face criminal prosecution. In other words, she takes everyone to be an absolute idiot as she desperately implements her bogus little political diversion tactic at the behest of Trump. Of course, many Dems, media, etc. did make insane claims about Russiagate, including the claim that voting systems were tampered with in the 2016 election. Huge percentages of Democratic voters came to believe the most insane maximalist conspiracies about Russian interference. The narrative spiraled completely out of control, divorced from the available evidence, and engulfed the U.S. political system for several years straight. After effects still linger today. I'm not denying any of that for a second. I covered it much more closely than Tulsi Gabbard ever did, starting from the very beginning. But it's just not factually accurate that Obama himself ever claimed voting systems were tampered with or that he suppressed intelligence to that effect. Could it be argued that Obama should have been more proactive in tamping down on the insane proliferation of Dem conspiracies? Sure, there are plenty of legitimate critiques to be made of Obama in the 2016 election interference issue, or any number of other issues. But that's not what Tulsi Gabbard is doing. She's doing another simpering political shtick to appease Trump and promulgate bullshit. That's her clear MO so far as Director of National Intelligence. Yeah, I mean, that I pretty much
well done,
endorse
sir. Well done, sir.
Every word of that. And in case you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. This is a funny video of Sam Cedar kind of melting down. I won't play the meltdown part because it's not relevant. But here's Michael Tracy demanding Sam Cedar apologize for being part of the shit-lib Russiagate hysteria mob. So he does have bona fides on this issue, obviously.
Of one of the potential players in this this whole that was caught up in the investigation, or at least peripheral to it, came on my show 3 times after that to discuss the investigation.
Talk about Marcy Wheeler. They relied a lot on Marcy Wheeler's reporting, which turned out to be nonsense.
And you can tell me why I need to apologize to that for my audience.
Great. Here's why. So I agree 100% with Matt Taibbi when he says in his recently published piece, which I'm sure you're aware of, that the scale of the media error as it relates to Trump-Russia matches or exceeds the scale of the media error as it relates to Iraq/WMDs, not in the sense that they cause comparable levels of death and destruction, because obviously Iraq cannot feasibly be surpassed in that arena, but because of the all-consuming, diluted behavior that totally overtook huge swaths of the media, to the point that there's now this kind of Russia skeptics caucus in media that includes like me, Greenwald, Taibbi, Aaron Mate at The Nation, et cetera, because there were so few of us who were offering a countervailing perspective. And thankfully, we have gotten some recognition over the past couple of days, and I'm gratified by that. I don't want to gloat. I don't want to celebrate, because it's actually a very depressing topic.
Michael, that's
to me,
all you've been doing.
And I despair.
All right. Well, he earned it. I mean, so there you go. So like this is a guy who was as critical of Russiagate as anyone, you know, who could clearly see a distraction where one obviously exists. I watched a bit of Jimmy's stream last night. He said the same thing, essentially. This is a distraction. Jimmy was, you know, as on top of this as anybody else at the time. It's obvious.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you don't have to defend Barack Obama to understand this for what it is. This is as obvious as it gets. Now, I want to make this point. Now, if you look at, okay, so here is a montage that was put out. Nobody ever said Russians hacked the election. I think this is an important point to make, except, of course, they all said the Russians hacked the election. So, yes, this is an example of the media definitely running with this.
Election to elect Trump is the end of our democracy. Votes were definitely affected. Russia hacked the election to tilt it to Mr. Trump.
The Russians definitively hacked the election.
Russia did hack the election. No doubt. The Russians hacked the election.
Yes, Russia hacked the election.
Fact, Russia hacked the election.
President-elect Donald Trump still not sounding convinced that Russia hacked the election.
The president does not want to come to terms with the fact that the Russians hacked the election.
So this goes on for several more minutes, but you get the picture. We all understand that when they said hack the, this is what was so maddening about Russiagate, and this is what made it so frustrating arguing with liberals about it. They never defined what they meant when they said hack the election. Does hack the election mean go in on election night and tamper with vote machines and vote counts? Or does hack the election mean they hack the DNC emails? Or does hack the election mean, hack the brain of the American voter by propagandizing them into hating Hillary and loving Trump? They were very evasive on that point, which made them impossible to argue with because you could never actually pin down what they actually thought happened, what the actual accusation was. It was very similar to George Bush propagandizing for the Iraq War, never directly saying Saddam Hussein was behind 9/11, but constructing his arguments in such a way that led a lot of people to believe that anyway. So one more video as part of this segment. This is, I think, an interesting piece of video to watch in this context. Here's Keith Olbermann at the time, when he had his head on straight, taking George Bush to task for insinuating very cynically and sleazily that there was some Saddam Hussein Al-Qaeda connection, even though he never actually came out and said it explicitly.
Himself came back today, and in the questions and answers that followed a speech in Cleveland, he insisted he never linked Iraq and Saddam Hussein to 9/11.
He said there were three main reasons for going to war in Iraq: weapons of mass destruction, the claim that Iraq was sponsoring terrorists who had attacked us on 9/11, and that Iraq had purchased nuclear materials from Niger. All three of those turned out to be false.
First, just if I might correct a misperception, I don't think we ever said, at least I know I didn't say, that there was a direct connection between September the 11th and Saddam Hussein. We did say that he was the state sponsor of terror. I was very careful never to say that Saddam Hussein ordered the attacks on America.
Then that must have been a different George W. Bush who gave the State of the Union address on January 28, 2003.
Saddam Hussein aids and protects terrorists, including members of Al-Qaeda. Secretly and without fingerprints, he could provide one of his hidden weapons to terrorists or help them develop their own.
See, so you say that over and over again, even if you don't come out and blame Saddam for 9/11. You create a word cloud of Saddam Hussein, terrorist, Al-Qaeda, 9/11. It creates in the public mind the impression that they were behind it, just like at one point, I think 50 to 60% of Democrats actually thought that the Russians tampered with vote counts, even though they never came out and explicitly said it. That's how propaganda works. And yeah, it was a completely sleazy and destructive thing to do, for which they deserve to pay a very dear political price. And they did pay a very dear political price. You know how I know that? Check who the fucking president is. It's Donald Trump again. This score has been settled. It's been settled. You cannot take this and then say, okay, in a jam, because we're in hot water with Epstein, we're now going to inflate this into something it's not by accusing Barack Obama of treason in a desperate ploy to get the headlines off of Jeffrey Epstein. This score has already been settled. You won this fight. It's a fight that, frankly, you deserve to win. The Democrats deserve to be politically punished for that Russiagate bullshit story that they promulgated so cynically for so long. And you won. You won. That's it. There's really nothing else here besides, okay, if you can get Brennan for lying to Congress, that's an actual charge. That's an actual crime. But look at the way George Bush spoke there. You're going to say he's guilty of treason? I mean, you could. But at that point, like, if you want to take it to that level, now you have to ask, okay, so what is Donald Trump guilty of for begging the Secretary of State of Georgia to find him, 12,000 votes after the election? Is that not a treasonous conspiracy to undermine the legitimacy of Joe Biden's presidency? If that's treason, then you got to try Donald Trump. Like, yeah, you want to go down this road. No one is innocent. It's an obvious, cynical political ploy. And I think Tracy kind of nailed it in his explanation there.
Well, if you want to build the theory of the case that asking for another intelligence assessment with a clear bias on the part of the executive towards what they want you to produce is treasonous, then you literally have just described exactly how George Bush got his intelligence report claiming that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, because that's exactly what happened.
Yes.
They initially, his head of the CIA, I forget his name now. He was Greek. What was his name? You remember?
Yeah. Well, no. Was it George Tenet?
No. There was
I forget.
I can't remember now. It's going back a ways. But they were telling him, no, I mean, there's really no evidence. And according to the reporting, Bush said, Iraq. He demanded that they come up with evidence to justify an invasion of Iraq. And as bad as Russiagate might be and as damaging as it is to the country, I don't think anyone would argue that the Iraq war was not orders of magnitude more damaging. So if you're going to start to apply this kind of standard, well, you need to start with George Bush. You need to go and arrest George Bush. Now, playing that montage of the media, yeah, that really does bring you back. And it is part of the reason, among many other sins, that people have come to see the media as a propaganda machine that is not there to provide information, because that's exactly what it is. The fact that across all of these different media platforms, they all settled on the same word, and they do that all the time. Hacked. That's how that misimpression was created in the public mind. Misinformation, cheap fakes. They tried during the election. They're all saying cheap fakes. They all come up with, because Jean-Pierre led them in that direction. They all started saying cheap fakes because they couldn't claim this footage was actually fake. But this is the irony, and this is where what Misty says, reverse Russiagate, is very apropos. The independent media ended up exactly the same. It ended up exactly the same. All of these supposedly independent commentators and podcasters who are trying to tell you now that this is the most important story in the world all these years later, and that there's really strong evidence of treason and that Obama might be prosecuted. How are they any different from that montage of them all saying, hack the election, hack the election? They're doing exactly the same thing to you. Now, the reason that it's not sticking quite the way it did with the libs is, remember, the people who went over to that kind of media within the magosphere are largely people who saw through that and reacted against it. They didn't realize that a lot of the people who promised to be an alternative to it just wanted to do the same thing and capitalize on your anger at what they were doing. Now that's becoming more and more transparent, where, again, you're just going to wind up, just like you eventually did with the corporate media, you're going to wind up just with the dumbest people who still watch that and take it seriously. Now we're seeing that cycle happen with the Benny Johnsons and the rest.
Yeah. That is absolutely true. And, on the George W. Bush front, I obviously just want to make this point before we wrap the segment. It's not that George W. Bush does not belong in jail. He belongs in jail at The Hague for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and perhaps for treason. If you look into 9/11 close enough, that's my hunch, right? So there may be a treason case against George W. Bush for other things. But the reason why you can't arrest the sitting president, the reason why the Supreme Court granted them the kind of immunity that a lot of, conservatives were very, very happy about in the context of Trump is because, first of all, presidents are hired to commit crimes. I remember listening to a Chapo Trap House episode. That was one of Matt Christman's great moments. He says the reason why presidents don't get prosecuted for crimes is because the job is literally to commit crimes. Like that's the job. So if you start throwing presidents in jail for committing crimes, literally every president would belong in jail. Therefore, there's a very high standard for a crime like treason. Obviously, war crimes are war crimes. Obviously, George Bush is a war criminal, as is Joe Biden, as is Donald Trump, as is Barack Obama, for that matter, right? That's part of the job, is to commit crimes, including war crimes. And I'm not saying there should be no consequences for those. But if you're going to make accusations of treason and apply them so haphazardly, well, at that point, all bets are off. That's why I say that is an incredibly destabilizing accusation to make, assuming that the DOJ, actually follows through, which I suspect they will not because it's a laughable case, as Tracy said.
And just to clarify, yes, George Tenet, and yes, he was Greek.
Okay. Yeah, I thought CIA head was George Tenet, but I'm like, that doesn't sound like a Greek name, so maybe you're thinking somebody else. But no, okay, there you go. Tenet's a Greek name. We learned something today.
Well, I don't know that Tenet is a Greek name, but he was Greek. They could have changed it at Ellis Island.
Or maybe his mother was Greek, so he had Greek blood.
I mean, does Dobular sound like a Jewish name? They changed a lot of these names at Ellis Island.
That could be. Let's see here. Charles H. says, no more criticizing weather events. It's anti-Semitic. Thank you, Charles H. Skyman, 2204, thanks for the $10. Say Trump, the first president to act as a Trojan horse and a sacrificial PDF all at once. Truly one of a kind. I'm sure Vance Thiel will be a great leader. Thank you, Skyman. Appreciate that. Ryan, thanks for the €20. GOP and Dems were desperate to stop Trump since 2016. Also, lots of victims already went to court over Epstein, and any incriminating evidence would have come out there. Where were Dems screaming about this 10 years ago? Well, did you ask the first question? Or is that a repeat? No. That's the first one you asked. Incriminating evidence would have come out. Where were Dems screaming about this 10 years? Well, no. That's the point. They weren't screaming about it 10 years ago because they're implicated too. That's why I think the reason why I think a lot of the younger people are doing it now is because they see this as a real weak spot for Trump. And also, a lot of these younger Democrats weren't around 10 years ago. 10 years ago, the party was really, truly dominated by people who know people who are on the list, allegedly, so to speak.
How else do you explain Pelosi calling it a distraction?
Exactly. Brad Gilbert says TDS is just a PSYOP term like conspiracy theorist. Thank you. Jay Bell says new TDS equals Trump doormat syndrome. Good one, Jay Bell. Appreciate that very much. Eric Rousseau says release the Epstein Files. Sweat hog conspiracy. I plead a Barbarino. Who? What? Let's see here. Xandar Varkov. Don't worry, guys. Your show is not nearly pathetic as Comey, Crooked Hillary, and Obama's Russia, and Epstein hoaxes. Thank you for your attention to the matter. Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Nocturnal Human says this is all a distraction from the UFO files. When we know that lizards from Krypton are real, all your problems will be solved. Thank you, Nocturnal Human. All right. 3 Tom the Bomb. Geez, Russell, not too soon to make the whole Hogan N-word jokes. No, I don't think it's too soon.
Never too soon.
Never too soon. Come on. All right. Let's move right on along here. Go to Ukraine.
As you might have heard, Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. How corrupt are they? Ukraine is so corrupt that according to Foreign Policy magazine, they're still too corrupt to join the West. That's how corrupt Ukraine is. Transparency International ranked Ukraine at 104 out of 180 countries in the corruption index for 2023. Far worse than members of the European Union, whom Ukraine wishes to join as an equal. Denmark was ranked as the least corrupt, Germany at number 9, Estonia at number 12, France at number 20. Ukraine 104 out of 180 countries on
Wow.
corruption. That's who we're sending billions of dollars to. Now, you might remember Cy Hirsch a couple of years ago wrote an article claiming that all the generals are driving around in Mercedes and BMWs in Ukraine, that people are setting up front defense contract companies to get that money. We don't know if that's true. That's what he reported. But now Zelensky defends bill stripping anti-corruption bodies' independence amid protests. Here's a video.
Gathered here in Ukraine's capital, Kiev. They are here not to demand surrender in Russia's war against Ukraine that began more than 3 years ago. They are here to protest against the actions of their own government. This all comes after Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky signed the bill into law that critics say would weaken the anti-corruption infrastructure. People are very furious, as you see, and the public outrage is connected to the fact that this infrastructure, and also other institutions, they were built after Ukraine's revolution in 2014. So for them, it's also destroying their values, the values of democracy that are also the foundation in the war and the resistance against Russia's invasion.
Can't ask them to shut the fuck up in the background for 2 seconds while she does
Hey,
her
hey,
thing?
quiet, guys,
Quiet.
quiet. I'm on camera. Volodymyr Zelensky has defended his approval of a contentious bill that weakens Ukraine's anti-corruption bodies, as its passage into law triggered the first serious protests against his government. The move on Tuesday has put the president on a collision course with civil society activists and some of Ukraine's veterans, and is likely to dismay Ukraine's European partners. On Tuesday, Ukraine's parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, passed a controversial bill that effectively removes the independence of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, known as NABU, and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. It gives sweeping new powers to Ukraine's prosecutor general and makes it easier for the government to control which cases are pursued. Critics say the legislation allows political interference and is a major step backwards in the fight against corruption. Late on Tuesday, Zelensky signed the bill into law, rejecting calls for him to use his presidential veto. In his nightly video address, issued well after midnight, Zelensky said he had spoken with the NABU chief, Semen Kryvonos, and other top prosecutors. Anti-corruption bodies, Zelensky said, would continue to function, but without any Russian influence. It all must be cleansed. Without those Russians, you'd have to invent them, right? They're a very convenient shield to hide behind. Earlier, about 1,500 protesters gathered next to Zelensky's presidential administration complex. They shouted slogans outside his window, including "shame" and "veto the law," and waved homemade banners denouncing the bill. There were protests in other large cities, including Dnipro, Lviv, and Odessa. If the bill goes ahead, it will make it harder for Ukraine to join the European Union. We will go back to dictatorship, said Sasha Kazantseva, before Zelensky reportedly gave his approval. You're kind of already there in the dictatorship, I hate to tell you. Ukraine's application to join the EU is dependent on the progress it makes in fighting corruption. Since 2022, EU countries have provided Kyiv with significant military and economic support running into billions of euros. The European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, criticized the bill's adoption. So here's Lord Bebo's tweet on this. Ukrainian parliament passed a law that effectively eliminates anti-corruption agencies. Both these agencies, the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, are now stripped of their independence and will now be turned into government law enforcement agencies. Corruption prosecution will now happen with direct approval by the corrupt government. Again, this is centralizing corruption investigations within a government that is ranked in the bottom half of corruption worldwide. Revolutionary Blackout Network. Zelensky has banned the right to collectively bargain, opposition parties, oppositional media, and now he is planning to dismantle anti-corruption bodies in government. Zelensky and the Banderite Nazis have turned Ukraine into a full-blown fascist stage. This is what the NATO left is in support of. Yes, of course, this is part of the absurdity of arguing that you're fighting for freedom and democracy in Ukraine, of all places. Before this war started, it was long identified as the most corrupt country in Europe, as a country rife with corruption. And since the war started, Zelensky has shut down opposition parties and he shut down freedom of the press. What you got yourself here is a corrupt dictatorship that you're defending. You're not defending any kind of a democracy. Here's Marjorie Taylor Greene. Huge protests erupt in Kyiv against Ukrainian President Zelensky as he is a dictator and refuses to make a peace deal and end the war. Good for the Ukrainian people. Throw him out of office. And America must stop funding and sending weapons. Didn't she vote to fund and send weapons the last time a vote came up? Didn't she make a lot of noise about how she wasn't gonna?
No, you're confusing it. I mean, maybe, but I think what you're thinking of is you're thinking of the War Powers resolution. Making a lot of noise about how we can't grant the president the authority to go to war, and then she voted against it anyway because she didn't think he was going to.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Just like the Democrats did with George Bush. Well, we didn't vote for the Iraq War. We voted to give him the authority, thinking he wouldn't do it.
The Iraq
we trusted him to make the right call. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And the Russian embassy in Kenya, nothing says democracy at war like abolishing anti-corruption agencies during martial law, banning protests, and concentrating power in a tight circle, all while missiles fly overhead. Bravo, Kyiv regime. Even G7 ambassadors raised an eyebrow this time. So that's a pretty good troll from the Russians. I'll tell you, the Russians are known for their spying. They should also be known for their trolling.
Yes, they do troll well.
They do. They're pretty good trolls. Yeah, it's amazing how blatant Ukraine is willing to be, because very much like Israel, they're confident the money and weapons will keep coming no matter what they do. If they were really worried that there are lines they can't cross without getting cut off, they would not do this. They would not. It is so clear when you are known for your corruption how dangerous it is to centralize corruption investigations in the government. If they had any fear that perception might hurt their financing, they wouldn't do it. They know no matter what they do, they'll keep getting financing. There is this illusion that people have with the complicity of the corporate media that Ukraine is some bastion of freedom and democracy is freaking absurd. I mean, people are just not told. Like, this is where you want to talk about the media being the enemy of the people. They are. They are. I mean, not for the reasons Donald Trump will tell you they are, but they are. They're not the American public. I have not seen the libs get whipped up into a real lib frenzy like they did when Trump dressed down Zelensky in the Oval Office since the height of Russiagate, man. They are hypnotized. They are hypnotized and brainwashed because they're never told these things. When are you going to turn on CNN and see a story about how there's actually no freedom of the press in Ukraine? How it's rife with corruption. How they have Nazi battalions which they justify by saying better to work with them. Like, when do you see stories like that? People don't understand what we're supporting. They really don't.
Well, not only that, but, as time goes on, of course, they're going to double down on getting more corrupt. And of course, they're going to double down on crushing not only any dissent, but any inquiry into the extent of their corruption. Because don't forget, they're going to be dealing with a population that understands that their government just destroyed generations of their country.
Right.
In order to fight a war that they never had any chance to win, because their president is a comedian who Boris Johnson and Kamala Harris tricked into thinking that he was going to be the 21st century's Winston Churchill. Like, the backlash against the Ukrainian government is just going to be seismic. I mean, they destroyed their country. They're pulling people off the streets, throwing them to the front lines to be killed. They're taking fighters in their 50s now. They got no men left. Like, the country is destroyed. Right. So of course you're going to have to double down on corruption. It's the only way you're going to hang on to power is by becoming more corrupt and more draconian in your enforcement against people who question it and who call it out, because you're not going to be able to keep the society going on goodwill alone. There's not going to be any. How could there be? How could there be? It's only a matter of time before they accept defeat. I don't say that because I want it to be true. I have no dog in that fight, right? But I say that because that's obvious. That's obvious.
Well,
right?
if you look
the government's not going to be able to hold the society together absent rampant corruption.
Right. And if you look at what Zelensky said there, he's really giving away the game. What do you mean we have to remove Russian influence? What the fuck? Do you have evidence that there's Russian influence in the corruption agencies?
Right.
That really points towards what a post-war Ukrainian society would look like, right? You'll just run it in this corrupt way and just hide behind Russia whenever you have to justify your corruption. I mean, it's what they're doing now. But this is what we are funding for the future. If there is a Ukraine in the future, that's what it's going to look like. Yeah, no, we can't empower these people. Russia. They're Russian. They're Russian agents, very much like here.
Right. Exactly. Pan Sapiens, thanks for the €20. Russell, you interrupt and step on Keaton's bits quite often. We do it to each other on occasion. It's okay. Let him finish, please. You guys are great and enlighten me. Well, thank you, Pan Sapien. It used to be a lot worse. When you started the show, we were new. We used to scream over each other all the time.
You know what? I find when people say that, it's or in either direction. It just depends on whose commentary they like better.
Right, maybe.
You know, like if you actually watch the videos, I don't interrupt Keaton any more than Keaton interrupts me. And sometimes you'll see comments, Keaton, why don't you let Russell
Keaton,
finish?
shut up and let Russell talk.
It just depends on who you like.
Well, in that case, I appreciate the compliment. Thank you, Pan
Yes,
Sapiens.
take it as a compliment.
Yes, I take that as a compliment. Brad Gilbert. Bannon tied to Mercer family and Cambridge Analytica. Thanks, Brad. The Yuppie says, is it bad that I still laugh every time Trump talks and tries to defend himself? He's such a scumbag. Yes, thank you. The Yuppies appreciate that. Brad Gilbert says, neocons trying to turn MAGA versus Putin to arm Ukraine. Yes, I believe that's true. I mean, that's what Nick has said, that, it took Trump to come in and say, hey, we tried negotiating with Putin, right? Like, they couldn't really sell the Ukraine war under Kamala because you'd still have, the right united against it. They had to switch out the leadership so that Trump could extend the olive branch, have Putin, batted away, and then, I guess we have no choice. Jay Tolbert says, Malcolm Jamal Warner, Ozzy Osbourne, Hulk Hogan, and Chuck Mangione all gone. I'm so over this week. Oh, Chuck Mangione died too? Wow, that's 4. That's 4. He's not as famous, but wow, that's crazy. Luis Dela Cruz says, oh my God, they're going to throw aliens and UFOs under the bus to distract from Epstein. So awesome. Thank you, Luis Dela Cruz. Appreciate that very much. Okay, let's move on along here. What do I got? Where's my stuff at? There it is. Perfect. All right. So this really caught my eye here. And so I'm glad we could make this story happen. So Argentina confirms start of privatization process for ISA state water firm. So I don't know. You've probably heard it said, over the past couple decades as these wars are fought for oil. They say, yeah, today we're fighting for oil. In the future, there's going to be wars for water. There's going to start to be water wars, and there's going to start to be the commercial commodification of water to a greater extent over time. Argentina's government has formally announced the start of the privatization process for struggling state-owned waterworks, ISA. I hope I'm saying that right. The struggling state firm provides water and sanitation services to some 11.2 million people in Buenos Aires and part of its suburbs. The privatization plan is part of President Javier Milei's economic program. ISA was included in the so-called Ley de Bases mega reform passed last year, which includes a package of economic reforms and a list of state-owned companies that were subject to privatization. Now, this next paragraph got omitted from the slideshow accidentally, but I'll read it. The privatization of the company will allow for the modernization of the sector and improve the price and quality of the service, I'm sure, said presidential spokesperson Manuel Adorni at a press conference. The process will incorporate private capital through the transfer of 90% of the company's shares currently held by the state, he explained. This will be done through a national and international public tender to select a new operator for the company and, in parallel, an initial public offering to open up the company's capital to other investors, Adorni added. Now, Mint Press News dug a little deeper into this, and so the plot kind of thickens here a bit. Argentina announces privatization of state water with Israeli state firm the principal beneficiary. The government of Argentina have announced plans to privatize the country's water resources, selling it off to foreign firms. Israeli state-owned water company Mekarat, accused of complicity in war crimes against Palestine, is in pole position to take advantage. Mekarat has already made confidential deals with 12 Argentinian provinces. The move is part of a far-right anarcho-capitalist President Javier Milei's fire sale of state assets. Milei's administration has fired tens of thousands of public employees, shuttered 13 government ministries, and removed price controls on rent and key goods. As a result, poverty has drastically increased, with extreme poverty now being about 30% of the entire country. So Al Jazeera did a piece on this last year, November of 2023. Amid Gaza war, activists in Argentina aim to expel Israeli water company. Since September 2022, 7 Argentinian provinces have signed wide-ranging agreements granting Mekarat significant influence over how they allocate water resources. Marta Maffei, a former deputy in the National Congress, is among those who oppose Mekarat's expansion in Argentina. She has advocated for a law to protect water access as a basic human right. Why should a state enterprise that manages water as a form of social control come to Argentina? Maffei said. In our territories, there are also indigenous peoples. There are poor peasant communities who demand their water. Maffei's home province of Rio Negro signed an agreement with Mekarat in February to transfer a number of responsibilities to the company, including calculating the economic value of water and drafting a proposal for an authority to regulate drinking water and sanitation services. BDS, of course, mentions Mekarat illegally appropriates Palestinian water, diverting it to illegal Israeli settlements and towns inside Israel, and imposes severe obstacles to Palestinians accessing their own water. Amnesty International has accused Israel of depriving Palestinians of their access to water as a means of expulsion. A French parliamentary report accused Israel of imposing a system of water apartheid in the occupied Palestinian territory. So yes, you're contracting this private water firm, this Israeli firm, which already uses water as a weapon, as a punitive weapon against oppressed people, and bringing it into a country whose poverty rate has just exploded. Now we're going to see a little video here. This is from Apartheid Adventures, so shout out to them. They go into more detail about this water company and how they oppress through water apartheid, quote unquote, the Palestinians.
Water. Everyone loves it. Everyone needs it. So come to Israel, where Mekorot, Israel's national water company, makes sure that you have all the water you want if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. And how does Mekorot guarantee that? By making sure all that water doesn't get wasted on those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category. For you, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, 300 liters a day. For them, 70 liters a day. For you, continuous year-round uninterrupted flow. For them, rationing, restrictions, cutoffs in dry months. Your towns pay 1.8 shekels per cubic meter. Their towns pay 2.5 shekels per cubic meter. Mekorot. Liquid apartheid. In Israel, if you're of the correct ethnic religious category, you have civil rights, voting rights, take their land and build a settlement rights, and best of all, water rights. For those who are not of the correct ethnic religious category, Mekorot will pump the water from under their land, dry up their springs and wells, and make them pay for the water. And if they don't cooperate, we'll destroy their pipes and cisterns. In fact, they'll be lucky to get any water at all. If we don't admit their town as a town, Mekorot won't connect them to the national water carrier system, all to guarantee your 3 showers a day and your ethnic privilege discount if you're of the correct ethnic religious category. That's why we call Mekorot apartheid in a pipe. And they're not stopping in Israel. Mekorot is making deals in Cyprus, Italy, Greece, Brazil, Argentina, Uganda, the Netherlands. Okay, they were stopped in the Netherlands and Uganda and Argentina, but with your support, Mekorot can start privatizing water everywhere and making sure that water is pure, clear, and plenty for those who can afford it. So if you support apartheid, Israeli settlements, ethnic privilege, privatization of water and natural resources, income inequality, and everything else that makes you feel special, then join Apartheid Adventures in saluting Mekorot, making sure water is a privilege and only for the privileged few.
Well done there by Apartheid Adventures. So back to the article briefly. He, meaning Manuel Adorni, the spokesperson for Millet, he added that the proposal keeps the company's employees as shareholders with 10% of the firm's share capital. ISA currently has 6,202 employees according to the official data. The government did not specify whether there will be layoffs as a result of the privatization, though it is widely expected. The company, formerly known as Agua y Saneamientos Argentinos Sociedad, I came close. I made it 60% of the way through. Sorry. Anonima was originally concessioned in 1993 to the French company Suez and other minor partners. In 2006, it returned to state ownership when Nestor Kirchner's 2003-7 government terminated the contract. ISA needed contributions from the Treasury worth some $13.4 billion since its renationalization until 2023, according to Adorni. In 2024, the company produced a surplus for the first time since 2007. So, when you look at policies like, the gutting of Medicaid here, like what we're going to cover in the next segment, adding medical debt back to people's credit reports, when you look at the gutting of government programs, the mass firings of government workers, and you ask yourself, okay, who does this actually help? How does this make the society any better? How could the commodification of water in such an impoverished society as Argentina possibly do any good for anybody? And I think this is an example of a story in which you kind of get your answer within the question itself. If you remember earlier on in the article, it said, or I believe this was in the Al Jazeera piece, they said, what you essentially do is you essentially sabotage these government agencies, these government programs, and then you allow the private sector to come in and cannibalize them. A fire sale of state assets into private hands. That's essentially what this is. That is essentially what this is. And it's a very, very terrifying thing. When you look at the inequality in Argentina, at the rise in extreme poverty since Milei took over, and now you're going to allow these for-profit companies to come in and commodify the water supply, you're just talking about exacerbating suffering for the sake of allowing capital to cannibalize the state. That is essentially what that is. And in this case, to add insult to injury, you're giving the contract to this Mekarot, which engages in apartheid as its MO. So pretty nightmarish. And, it always caught my eye. And it always caught my eye when I look at stories about water, because I remember hearing, you know what, someday there's going to be wars over water, right? Now we fight them over oil. Someday you're going to have wars over water, and we're getting there.
Well, that's the call. I forget his name, the Big Short guy. His next prediction was to invest in water.
That's right.
That's where he's put his money now. Yeah, those companies, the ones that publicly trade, have increased their stock price exponentially. So a lot of people are betting on that. We've seen what this looks like. If you remember, Bechtel pushed through government legislation to make collecting rainwater illegal in Bolivia after they privatized the water supply. And there was such a public outcry, they had to get rid of it. This is another example of how far the oligarchs will go if the people let them. It is no coincidence, and it's very revealing, that Milei is such a hero to so many of the people in the Trump administration, like Vance, like formerly Elon Musk. They love this guy. So what does that tell you about what they want America to be? If you look at what he's turning Argentina into, and they think that's a great idea, chainsaw, right? This is what they like. They want you to basically be like the human body in the Matrix. You're a power cell for their world, right? That's all they see the human race as. Peasants. The way aristocrats have always seen the broad population. They really want to go back to those circumstances that prevailed in civilization until relatively recently. The idea of broad-based prosperity and some kind of recourse to the law against oligarchs, against aristocrats, that's a pretty recent concept. What they're trying to do is, in a world of 21st century technology, revert to the circumstances that have prevailed in most societies really until the 20th century, where you're going to have a very narrow band at the top of super wealthy people who enjoy all of the fruits of civilization, and the rest of you are there to serve them. Your backs are there for them to stand on. And the more they can extract from you, the better. And the more they can crush you down into a state of desperation such that you don't have the time, energy, or calories to organize and rise up against them, the better. This is the world they want. If you want to see what they want, watch what Milei does in Argentina.
Yep, exactly. And that's part of why this caught my eye, because the same dismantling of the state is happening here for the same reason, because they want the oligarchs to come and take it over. This is what Hedges talks about. It's the Democrats versus Republicans. It's really corporatists versus the oligarchs. The oligarchs are the rentier capitalists, toll booth capitalism. Oh, you want to drink a water? Pay me, I own the water.
Right.
You want to drive on the road? Pay me, I own the road. You want to talk on the phone? Pay me, I own the phone company. Right. And so that is what this is a sign of for sure.
Well, there's why I always say one of the first signs that somebody is a fundamental moron is if they claim to be a libertarian. A lot of people say, "Why don't you like Dave Smith?" Well, that's one reason. Like, how stupid do you have to be to not realize in the moment that we're living in that the idea that if you remove all regulation, you're going to get some kind of a fairer capitalism just doesn't work? Like, isn't that obvious that the capitalists are just going to consolidate capital, making it impossible for that ideal of competition to take place? Like, isn't that obvious?
I mean, it's funny because, as the first 6 months of this new administration have gone on, look, I'm not a libertarian for those reasons, but I would say for the libertarians, you know what? At least they're not going to throw me into like fucking alligator Alcatraz, right? Like there is
well, there's that,
certain,
sure.
there's a certain commitment to like civil liberties.
But you don't need to be a libertarian to believe that people shouldn't be thrown down.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is
the thing that distinguishes the libertarians is the way they carry that over into economics. I mean, that's just, basic belief in civil rights at that point.
But I'm saying, would you rather have that? Like, would you rather have Thomas Massey or Donald Trump if you had to live in a society dominated by one ideology or the other? Yeah, I mean, I would sign up for the libertarians over that. Not endorsement.
Sure,
but this is why I say, like this, and just to finish the point, this is why I say you can never really just embrace that ideology, because what is your answer to this? And furthermore, what is your answer to private prisons and private law enforcement? I mean, what if private companies want to start locking people?
We used to have that.
Right, we used to have that. Exactly. So
we used to have in New York, you had the fire departments didn't exist, so street gangs would put out the fires. After a while, they figured out it was more profitable to light them,
right,
and then show up 20 minutes later and offer to put them out.
Right.
Yeah. The reason I say that's really stupid is when you look at like the kind of conservatism that Donald Trump represents, they haven't gone to a lot of trouble finding some kind of a completely harebrained theory of what they're doing to justify it and make it sound like it somehow makes some kind of sense. They're just fucking evil.
Right.
They're just evil. You're poor. We're rich. We're going to extract as much wealth from you as we can. The whole libertarian thing is like you spent a lot of time building a completely stupid idea, but you put so much time into it that you're able to convince yourself that this is actually intelligent. In the moment we're living in, how on earth could you think that less regulation is the answer?
I agree with that. All right. So folks, hey, it's a good day to become a member because we're heading over to do our post game fairly shortly. So if you would like to sign up and become a member, you can do so. DoDissidents.com/Patreon, DoDissidents.com/Substack, or DoDissidents.com/Locals. Perks of joining include your name up in lights here on the member scroll. You also get call-in access to our post-show Q&As, which happen every Sunday night over on Rumble. You get Film Club live streams once a month, and you get these post games once a month. So we are doing our patron post game today, and there's still time to sign up and get access. So if you go at any one of those links that are on the screen there, you sign up, and it's the most recent post in the feed that you will have access to upon signing up. You'll get a link to a private stream, which is in progress right over there. We got 33 people hanging out in the private stream already. After the next couple segments, we are going to switch over to that private stream exclusively and do the rest of the show where we're covering Ozzy Osbourne and South Park, and then we will take some of your calls as well. So we've still got a lot of show left. Your membership is what keeps this show going. We could not do it without you, so we thank you all very much for your support. Goo81 says, don't care much for Ozzy Osbourne. He's a Zionist whose wife demanded Kneecap to be canceled for saying F Israel and F Palestine, while her husband was famous for biting the head off a bat. Oh, we'll get to it.
That is a big part of that's really why I'm covering it.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of it's the anti-tribute. Regarding the Hulkster brother, he stained who he was for the many wrestlers he screwed over, especially Jesse Ventura when he tried to unionize wrestlers. Oh yeah, no, he was a piece of garbage He is selling the water firm to an Israeli water company. That's right. Yep, we covered it. Keaton, the chat loves your pronunciation of the word water. LOL. Yeah, I say what? I don't know. Is that a New Yorker thing? Water. 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 Noah Goop says, agua afuera. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate that very much. Sparky says, didn't Ellis Island use the names, a list of names given to them by the ships that brought the immigrants in, so contrary to popular belief, weren't responsible for the infamous immigrant misnomers? No, people gave fake names at Ellis Island all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very often they just gave them the name that they wanted to have.
That they wanted to have.
Which was often an anglicization of the family name.
Right. Like there were a lot of Italians who were on the run from the mafia. They didn't want to be found, so they just changed their name when they got here. Yeah, no, people gave fake names at Ellis Island.
A lot of Italians, funny enough, took Irish names because they knew they couldn't pass themselves off as WASPs.
Right.
But being Irish in the racial hierarchy of America at the time was better than being Italian.
There you go. Mary Beth says, thank you guys for your courageous and methodical reporting, all with a powerful moral code and much appreciated comic relief. Well, thank you, Mary. Appreciate that very much. It's very kind of you to say. Ryan says, to DJT being mad with BB, every now and then Trump has to make it seem like he's not taking Miriam Adelson's 15-inch tiny hat dildo of his heart. Thank you. Brad Gilbert says, color rev to swap Z with a MAGA-approved hatch. You shuck. I can't. You tried to get too many characters in there, Brad. You got to spring for the $5 next time so I could see what you're saying. But thank you for that. All righty. Let's go ahead. Move right along.
We made quite a lot out of how scumbag douchebags like Mark Andreessen were really trying to drum up fake populist rage against one of the few government agencies that was actually protecting them from predators like Mark Andreessen. He went on the Joe Rogan show, and wow, man, the next day it was like the confederacy of dunces all came together on X to scream about taking down an agency that they didn't understand. Let's hear a little bit of what he had to say.
With this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control.
It's a lie. Elizabeth Warren, at the time of this interview, which was less than a year ago, had nothing to do with that agency. She created the agency, but she had nothing to do with the agency.
And it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, it terrorize financial institutions.
You know, if you read the Constitution, there's no such thing as a corporation, but he owns one.
Right. Prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just by terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services.
Can you give me an example?
By doing something new in financial services, he means like when he robbed old ladies of their life savings by promoting a dodgy financial instrument that blew up in their face and then refusing to make good on the money that they lost. That's what he means by innovative.
You can say, debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from. Is the
CFP, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, actually initiated a case against a bank for debanking a Christian conservative organization.
These agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly. Like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee who
for what?
For having the wrong politics, for saying unacceptable things. Under current banking regulations, here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20.
All right. So you get the idea. So Joe was pretty incurious about what a bunch of bullshit his guest was spewing at him. And as a result, the next day, a lot of people who listened to his show had a completely batshit idea of what the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was. And partly as a result of people like Joe Rogan not doing a little due diligence and letting people like Andreessen run around spreading this propaganda on behalf of their oligarchic class. Now, a lot of those people are going to see medical debt on their credit reports. Look, Elon, man, he was so excited. This is back when him and Trump were still fucking, running around with Doge. He went in there to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, RIP. So excited about it. CFPB budget slashed by almost 50% as Trump signs One Big Beautiful Bill Act. President Donald Trump on July 4th, 2025, signed into law the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, sweeping legislation that has direct impacts on the future of the CFPB. The final bill reduces the CFPB's operating budget from 12% of the Federal Reserve's total operating expenses for 2009, adjusted annually for inflation, to 6.5%, nearly a 50% reduction in funding. And they have wasted no time backing down on all of the things that the agency was trying to do for consumers, like taking medical debt off their credit reports. Here's a little video about that.
Presidency, the Biden administration announced a rule to remove medical debt from Americans' credit reports. A federal judge in Texas last week, though, blocked that rule from taking effect. Now, this change would have removed $49 billion of debt, $49 billion from the credit reports of 15 million people in an attempt to alleviate some of that pressure. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says its research has shown that outstanding health care claims are often used by creditors to deny loans and mortgage applications. According to a 2024 analysis from the health policy group KFF, roughly 6% of adults in the United States owe more than $1,000 in medical debt. About 1% owe more than $10,000. Noam Levy joins us now. He's a senior correspondent at KFF Health News. And Noam, thank you very much for being with us. What was the judge's reasoning for removing this rule when it could have made such a big impact for so many?
So the federal government had been sued by the credit reporting agencies as well as other plaintiffs, including the debt collection industry, all of which had argued that the CFPB had misinterpreted the 1970 law called FCRA that governs debt collection. And since the Biden administration was no longer in office, the Trump administration decided not to defend this regulation to remove credit reports from consumers' credit reports. And ultimately, the judge just ruled back the plaintiffs in the case and as well as back the Trump administration and concluded that, in fact, the CFPB under the Biden administration, in his reasoning, had overstepped its authority and didn't have the authority under the law to remove these medical debts from the credit reports.
Well, given all this, where does this ruling leave people who have significant medical debt when it comes to credit reporting? What should they do?
I mean, it's potentially problematic. The number of people that are impacted, about 15 million, is considerably lower than it used to be. There have been a number of steps that have been taken by the credit reporting agencies to remove smaller debts from people's credit scores and to remove debts that had been paid off. But for those 15 million people, having a significant unpaid medical bill on the credit report can depress the credit score. It can make it harder to rent an apartment, to get a job even. And so these people face potentially some pretty serious barriers to advancing their economic situation as a result of this unpaid medical bills.
Outside of paying those medical bills, is there anything that comes to top of mind of something that they can do to work around all this?
Well, a lot of times there are opportunities to set up payment plans to try to get some help to get.
Yeah. All right. So this is why people like Mark Andreessen, people like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos have been screaming to the heavens about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau because it was effective. Because it was effective. Right. It was one of the only government agencies that actually helped people, that actually put some kind of check on their power. And you have to remember, these people have never been richer. By some estimates, The wealth inequality in America is greater than it was in ancient Egypt. This is how fucking greedy they are. It's not enough for them. It's not enough for them. This one agency that put some kind of check on their greed was a thorn in their side that they just could not tolerate. And they all piled into the Donald Trump campaign and financing and supporting Donald Trump because he was going to get rid of the CFPB. I mean, it was part of it, as Andreessen made it very clear there. Another point in the interview, he says, I'm voting for Donald Trump. A rule lifting medical debt from credit scores was voided. What will change? This is from the Washington Post. An estimated 1/5 of U.S. households have medical debt on their credit reports, a burden that makes it more expensive for them to buy homes or finance new cars, and in some cases, more difficult to obtain jobs. A recent court decision has now kept that system in place. The rule was opposed by debt collectors who argued it would have encouraged financial delinquency, as well as banks and other lenders that use credit reports. Soon after President Donald Trump took office and dramatically downsized the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, this camp pinned its hopes on a lawsuit in which these trade groups argued that the CFPB under the Biden administration had overstepped its authority. The decision, which effectively scraps the rule, was praised by industry groups like the Consumer Data Industry Association, which argued that banks need medical debt information to evaluate whether a given individual will be a responsible borrower. Quote, America's financial system is the best in the world because it is based on a full, fair, and accurate credit reporting system, CDIA President and CEO Dan Smith said in a statement. You just know these people have no fear of hell. If your medical debts are below $500, they shouldn't affect your credit score. But if you have unpaid debts above that level, it could take a hit. The major credit reporting bureaus imposed that $500 threshold in 2023 following a scathing CFPB report that found medical debt doesn't predict creditworthiness as well as other forms of debt. A CDIA spokesperson said that cutoff will remain in place. Now, if you think about it, that's for obvious reasons. You decide to go out and spend beyond your means, that's a choice. Not to say nobody ends up in debt just because they have no other way to feed their family, but there's going to be more of a correlation between the person who bought the car that they couldn't afford and their credit score. You get sick and you can't pay your medical bills. That doesn't say anything about how you manage your finances.
Exactly.
So that's why they did not find it correlates in the same way. So what they're saying about the banks need this information, it's bullshit. Studies have shown that's bullshit. When the rule was issued under the Biden administration, the CFPB estimated the change would remove about $49 billion in medical bills of 15 million Americans and lead to the approval of about 22,000 more affordable mortgages each year, while credit scores of affected consumers would rise by an average of 20 points. Here's what's always funny with the conservatives. I thought you want an ownership society.
Right.
I thought you want all these homeowners so they have skin in the game, right? But they do everything they can to make it increasingly difficult, if not impossible, for people to achieve those things. Another study from the Urban Institute found that nearly 10 million consumers had medical debt in collections on their credit reports as of August 2024. Regional differences are also in play. An analysis by the Washington Post Department of Data concluded that medical debts are a major reason credit scores are lower across the American Southeast, especially in states where Medicaid wasn't expanded. Without insurance, lower income Americans bear a much larger burden of healthcare costs, which often translate into higher debt. So this is part of the irony of a lot of Trump's policies. They're going to most hurt his voters. It's going to most hurt these people in these regions. These people in these red states are more likely to have medical debt. This is why I say, man, you support these people. That is a peasant mind. And that's not an argument for Democrats. We're not Democrats. It's rainbow fascism versus the traditional original Coke flavor fascism. But, yo, man, like, why would you support these people? They clearly hate you. They do everything they can to make your life harder. And this is all taking place in a background against a backdrop where health insurance premiums, because of the same bill, are about to skyrocket. Some people's health insurance premiums are going to go up to 100%. So what's the result going to be? A lot of people are not going to get insurance. What's going to happen? They're going to go to the doctor. They're going to have medical debt. And now that's going to destroy your life. Now that's going to destroy your credit.
Of course. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, and it's very obvious. I mean, this is really just taking off at a speed that they wanted. I mean, this is the move fast, break things, libertarian tech bro ethos to the point where now, if you get sick, that could just spell financial ruin beyond normal circumstances, because now it can affect your credit score. Now it can affect your ability to claw your way out of financial ruin, right? Like this is one of those things. Look, I don't think there should be credit scores at all, quite honestly. But to have medical debt on a credit score is just completely perverse, because, as you said, it doesn't reflect people's choices with money. You don't have a choice if you get sick. And the insurance doesn't cover it, even if you're, and the idea that, well, if it's less than $500, you'll be fine. Whose medical debt is less than $500?
Right.
Whose?
Right. If you
go to the
medical
emergency
debt,
room, it's thousands of dollars to get in the door. Yeah.
This country, I keep saying it, and I take no pleasure in saying it. In the next year, as the consequences of these things really hit, this country is going to be a nightmare. Like, the basic idea of putting medical debt on your credit score, when we uniquely are one of the only countries on earth where you would have medical debt,
right?
If you're a citizen of a country, it's just absolutely perverse that we even have these conversations in this country. Now, I guess the only bright spot you could say there is we're about to enter the dream of the accelerationists, because if these circumstances don't create a collapse in the system and a broad uprising, that, remember, could go in many different directions, including many that you may not like. But if this does not create circumstances where people just refuse to cooperate with this system anymore, I don't know what would, because in the next year, people are going to be losing their health insurance. They're going to be having their credit destroyed. They're going to see runaway inflation. They're going to see a collapse in academic visitation from overseas, a collapse in students wanting to study here, a collapse in tourists coming to their cities. And, man, it's not just places like New York or Los Angeles that are going to be hit by no one wanting to come here. You got a lot of these border towns up around Canada are going to be devastated, even more so because they have less diversified economies. Yeah, man, it's going to get very, very ugly here. And at that point, a lot of the demons of this nation are going to be set loose, and that could go in any direction.
Well, that's what a social collapse is. That's the definition, basically. Brad Gilbert says communism and capitalism are the same. Centralized control of the economic planning with the rich and powerful. Government versus central bank. Overt or covert. Sparky says, I told you guys Javier Milei was parting out Argentina like a corporate raider, but you said I was a mad danger to myself and others. I didn't say that, Sparky. Maybe some
said that.
Maybe some people in the chat did, but not us. Maybe some in the chat did.
We never said that.
No. Hit 'em far. Thanks for the $5. Said Maxwell will get mistrial due to non-prosecution agreement of co-conspirators. Epstein's conviction sets a precedent for Trump covered under same. Sparky, thanks for the $10. Remember, one of the first, if not the first things Milei did as president was to sneak Argentina's gold reserves to England, so globalists would have even more leverage over Argentina. That's right. Sparky, water? You mean like out of the toilet? Idiocracy. Sparky says globalist elites think of regular people as bees. The problem is they're lousy beekeepers. That's right. Ryan said, what happened to DOJ auditing the Pentagon and Fort Knox? That's right. They never made it to Fort Knox. They had a falling out before they got to Fort Knox. Very sad. Hey, folks, if you are looking for some new music to listen to, why not check out John Coa, dissident sponsor of ours. So just a quick word, John Coa has a new single out now, and it's called Just a Little Off the Rails. John's been advertising with us for a while now, and this is the latest from his upcoming album. The core of these songs were the rhythm tracks from a collection of live acoustic performances between 2017 and 2020. John was going to release just the solo acoustic tracks, but he didn't feel like releasing music while witnessing at the same state of affairs we discuss right here on the show. So he decided to wait and to continue recording, and now he is releasing these songs in phases. So Just a Little Off the Rails is the first single. It's a great song. We've played it on Rumble before, and it's an autobiographical song featuring acoustic guitar, bass, vocals, and slide. So go and head over to John Coa's Spotify to check it out. You can access his Spotify at this link, dudissidents.com/Coa. That has the link to all of his socials. So please go and check out John's new song. Okay, let's see what do we got here. All right, folks, we got one more segment, then we'll wrap up chats and rants, and then we are headed over to the members post game. So last call to join, patreon.com/DoDissidents. I think we had 7 members sign up over the course of this show, so that's awesome to see. So patreon.com/DoDissidents. We'll see you over there. We got a crowd filing in over there in the members room, 63 strong so far. Last segment here on the public show of the day. So, folks, the Knesset in Israel has voted overwhelmingly for non-binding motion calling to annex the West Bank. The Knesset approved a non-binding motion in favor of annexing the West Bank on Wednesday, a symbolic gesture that united the otherwise fractious right-wing governing coalition. The resolution, which passed 71-13, declared that the West Bank is an inseparable part of the land of Israel, the historical, cultural, and spiritual homeland of the Jewish people, and that Israel has the natural, historical, and legal right to all of the territories of the land of Israel. It called on the government to apply Israeli sovereignty, law, judgment, and administration to all the areas of Jewish settlement of all kinds in Judea, Samaria, and the Jordan Valley, the government's term for the West Bank. The motion was advanced by Religious Zionism MK Simcha Rothman, Likud MK Dan Iluz, and Opposition Yisrael Beitenu MK Oded Forer. These are some names they pick for themselves here. Annexation of the West Bank, or all of its Israeli settlements, is a longtime aspiration of the Israeli right. In 2019, ahead of an election, Netanyahu pledged to annex the Jordan Valley on the territory's eastern flank. But that pledge and similar efforts took a back seat amid a protracted political crisis that saw a string of inconclusive elections. The government has not pursued binding annexation legislation since, though it voted in similar numbers last year against the establishment of a Palestinian state. So here is some video of the vote. 71-13 against. I hope the proposal has been accepted. Members of the Knesset. The Knesset has approved. I would like to say one more time. The Knesset has approved at this time a historic motion supporting the establishment of Israeli sovereignty over the territories of Judea and Samaria. It is a great privilege to be a member of the Knesset, which clearly states, and in most cases, this is our land, this is our home. The land of Israel belongs to the people of Israel. So, there you have it. The article continues, voting against were the Arab parties as well as the left-wing Democrats, which constitute a combined 13 votes, I guess, out of 84. So that gives you a sense of where Israeli opinion is.
Netanyahu doesn't represent Israel.
Right.
He's an aberration.
Yeah, exactly. The largest opposition parties, Yesh Atid and Blue and White, did not vote on the motion. Annexation of Judea and Samaria is a clear danger to the future of the state of Israel and the Zionist enterprise. Democrats MK Gilad Kariv posted on X, calling the motion a smokescreen for abandoning the hostages held in Gaza and advancing an evasion law. Ofer Kasif says the genocidal government put forward a motion for the agenda, the annexation of the West Bank. This was the gist of my response. So here's one of the Arab Party members objecting.
Bloodshed, end occupation, recognize Palestine. Stop the bloodshed.
One more time. Yeah, wow. I mean, you talk about a tough place to be saying that as an Arab representative in government. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas's deputy Hussein al-Sheikh called the annexation vote a dangerous escalation that undermines the prospects for peace, stability, and the two-state solution. Sheikh also called the vote a direct assault on the rights of Palestinian people who ostensibly would not receive equal rights to their Israeli settler neighborhoods in a scenario where Jerusalem annexes the West Bank. Urging the international community to intervene to roll back Israeli violations, the senior Palestinian official said countries should recognize a Palestinian state in response. So Kim Johnson, an MP, says tonight the Knesset had voted overwhelmingly to annex the West Bank, a symbolic move that would be illegal under international law, risks further destruction and ethnic cleansing, and serves a death knell for the two-state solution. We must recognize the state of Palestine. Now, this is the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs saying the decision demanding the annexation of the West Bank by Israel is void under international law and has no validity. Well, neither do the settlements themselves, and that didn't stop them from doing this. Starting in 1947, if you look at the disappearing Palestinian land going from green to white over the years. And this actually didn't even start then. Here's a Zionist dinner in New York City in 1932 talking about the need to cleanse Palestine and create a Zionist homeland.
American Jew, what an old-time reverencing admirer of Great Britain, I would say to England if I could, an Arab Palestine is a threat to Great Britain and a menace to the world. A Jewish Palestine is an asset to Great Britain and a blessing for the world.
So that even predates the state of Israel. And if we fast forward all the way to November of 2024, after the election of Donald Trump, here is Bezalel Smotrich salivating that now that Donald Trump is president-elect, annexation will be the project of 2025. Sorry, I gotta lower him and keep up with him. I intend, with God's help, to lead a government decision that says the government of Israel will work with the new administration of President Trump and the international community to apply Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, and for American and international recognition, and to the end of the Israeli-Arab conflict in the Middle East. I instructed the Settlement Administration at the Security Ministry and the Civil Administration to begin professional and comprehensive staff work and prepare and practice the necessary infrastructure for the application of sovereignty. The year 2025 will be, with God's help, the year of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. So there you go. They were very, very excited about this. Yeah, it's illegal under international law. Who's going to stop them? Right. Who is going to stop them?
Exactly.
That's why, I mean, you could call this a symbolic gesture, but what this is a statement of intent, and it arrived right on schedule. There you have it. Smotrich, as soon as Trump wins, they took the election as a green light to just go ahead and do this. Donald Trump lifted the declaration that the Israeli settlements were illegal. And so what do you think they're going to do? Of course, they're going to take that to mean that they have permission from the only world power that matters to them, apparently, the United States, to go ahead and do with the West Bank as they please. That's why it was very significant when Huckabee, blanked for a second, declined to even use the term West Bank. That's a signal as well. That gives them the green light to go ahead and do this. So yes, this has been a project almost now a full century, and well, over a full century actually. But if we go back to that video that we showed that Gen X girl found in 1932, yes, this has been what they wanted all along, and now is their chance to do it. Now is their chance to do it. And one of the things that you see when you look at global sentiment turning against Israel, well, that only reaffirms their idea that it's now or never. So we may as well just go for it. So, like I said, you can call this a symbolic vote, but it really is a statement of intent that's pretty unmistakable.
Yeah, we discussed this the other day. Their theory is clearly we're going to commit a genocide and a campaign of ethnic cleansing, and we'll apologize for it in 50 years. Our grandchildren can talk about how bad they feel about how they got this land, that we killed all these people to give them, and by then it'll be a fait accompli, and the historians can write about it. That's right. It. This is what they have always wanted. That was a very interesting video that you dug up there, by the way.
It wasn't me. It was Gen X girl. Found that. Yeah.
That was great, because remember, at right around that time, possibly at exactly that time, the Zionists were working with the Nazis.
Well, that was, yes, that the Havar agreement was being negotiated in 1932 at the time of that video.
Exact same time.
And then it was formalized in 33. Yeah.
So the Zionists are basically the cancer that ate the host. Remember, at this time, Jews thought they were crackpots. On the whole, Jews thought the Zionists were the whole idea that you're going to return to Palestine was bizarre, as indeed it is. You know, if you look at this history where the Jews lived in this area, it's a history where it changed hands multiple times between, the Canaanites were there, the Egyptians were there. I mean, what are Elamites going to come and take back part of Iran? Like, what are you even talking about? Which at that point, once you interrogate it that way, it's a religious motivation, which is nonsensical in and of itself, because most of these Zionists were secular.
Exactly.
It's just absolutely it's hard to even wrap your head around the way that this insane genocidal, by definition, colonial political project, they want to deny it now. But remember, at that time, colonialism was cool in the West, right? To be colonizing. They had companies setting up in Palestine that had colonial in the name. They didn't make any secret of it. It was very Kipling what they were doing at that. Yes, we're going in among the savages. If you look at their own writing about it, it's that very Western patronizing attitude. They're childlike, these Arab peoples. But it's really the cancer that ate the host, and now this is the end game that they've been building towards for over 100 years. But I do believe that their theory of the case, that they're going to be able to do what 19th century colonizers did in a 21st century world and just move on from this, I think they're wrong. As hopeless as it might seem now, I do not believe that the apartheid state of Israel is going to exist in 10 years. I don't really think it's going to exist in 5 years, but outside 10.
All right. We'll take some additional Rumble rants here, and then we are heading over to the post game. Argentina's inflation is larger than Venezuela's inflation, and Venezuela is sanctioned. Nestle took Canada 20 years to court, saying that fresh water is part of the free trade agreement, and Canada won. Ken Manji says, passing the Bechtel test, two oligarchs have a conversation and talk about nothing but money and power. Hillary Kitten says, you dirtbag's going to talk about Anna Kasparian losing her shit on Shabbos Kesterbaum on Piers last night? Yeah, I saw that. It's probably not going to change anyone's mind, but it was glorious. Sorry about the dirtbag thing. Yeah, that was. I saw that. That was pretty heated. I saw like the 30-second clip of it. Idea for Alligator Alcatraz sound drop, Union Dixie. Oh, way down south in the land of traders, rattlesnake, and alligators. There you go, Noah Goop. Thank you.
Not bad.
Eric Rousseau says there will never be debt relief of any kind for the people. Only the elites and corporate media state get it. Ken Texican says Serial descrambles to Israel and liars, so descrambles to Israel. Liars also descrambles to Israel minus the E. But I bet I can find a Rothschild to buy a vowel. Ha, free Palestine. Good one, Kenman. 3, Tom the Bomb. If we have a party, we have a chance. Lenin, Stalin, and Mao gave us the blueprints on how to win. Study hard, fight hard. Get organized, join the American Communist Party. See, you're the high roller that we like with the $10 donations. You got a comrade of yours that only gives us $1 to plug it. You got to get them to up their thing.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah.
We like you. EO Shush.
That's why everyone hates commies, man. Bad tippers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this guy's not. Spread that gospel. EO Shush. Did you catch the Tim Dillon Alex Jones podcast? Tim said his pussy isn't cheap. It looks like seafood dinner and smooth talking JD Vance. Open that pussy up. I'll get to it over the weekend. We've just been so busy. Now I know what to search for us, so I will.
I keep hearing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look for it over the weekend when I have some time. Sparky says Javier Milei will also part out and monetize Argentinian culture, where it'll be like post-Katrina New Orleans compared to pre-Katrina New Orleans. Rob Ross Source says, welcome to fan. Thank you for becoming a member. Passel says, you should see the Epstein saga as the Jesus effect, and that Epstein was Jesus, G. Maxwell was Mary Magdalene, and Trump is Peter. Thanks for that. So, folks, if you want to continue the show, I'll leave the link up there while we read the rest of these. Appreciate that. Andy Gardner says, just tuned in. Forgive me if this was mentioned, but Jax Page says you guys are basically liberal sympathizers. I guess I'll have to leave y'all wink with a tongue out. Yeah, we look. I'm sorry about that. I like Jax a lot. She asked us to fire someone because she got into a fight with them on Twitter, and we can't do that. Like, we can't police people's speech that way. It's not something we can do. I'm sorry her feelings were hurt, but we can't fire people based on social media fights. That's just not something we could do.
Yeah, I went to when we went to the Jose Vega rally. Somebody came up to me to tell me about how Misty Winston was a poser, and so what? Should we get rid of Misty?
Right, because this person who knew us and liked the show
we really can't get into those kinds of things. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I like Jax. I'm sorry your feelings were hurt, but we can't. I mean, if you work at a coffee shop and you insult someone on Facebook, does someone who knows you from the coffee shop, they call the coffee shop owner, fire this person, or I'm not coming to drink your coffee anymore? Well, that's a choice you can make if you don't want to come buy the coffee anymore, but you can't police people's speech that way. They're not, if they tweeted from our account or something.
That's part of what's crazy. Like, okay, so I mean, most people in our kind of corner of the world don't like cancel culture,
right?
And don't like call the manager people,
right?
So you called the manager to cancel an employee. How does that make any sense? Oh, it's okay when we do it,
right?
We don't like it, but it's okay if we can get what we want out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we just can't go there.
And as far as somebody's politics, I mean, you're talking about the narcissism of small differences for one thing, and aside from that, it's a job, man. It's a job. Like, what do you think? What do you think these things are, man? Like, we put together exhibits and clip articles. Like, it doesn't enter into it. We could hire like a MAGA guy if he did a good job. I wouldn't care.
Yeah, I mean, if it reflects in the work, sure. But that, to me, that's
if it does.
Yeah. Right.
But because that's a lot of the argument. Like, oh, this person, and I'm not going to litigate the politics again. It's online nonsense. It's online nonsense. People spend too much time on X, and they get caught up in these things, man. It's like It's like you're watching a bunch of kids and one comes up to you. He hit me. It's very serious for them, but it's not very serious for you.
Yeah. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Sparky, in the early 1700s, Britain's King George, a German, suggested Germans emigrating to his North America colonies anglicized their names. For instance, Zimmerman became Carpenter. Thank you, Sparky. Serial liars descrambled on Rumble. There you go. Sparky, within families, some German immigrants anglicized their name and some didn't. In colonial cemeteries, you'll see siblings' graves, some with the German last name and some with the English version. All right, everybody. Patreon.com/Due Dissidents if you want to come hang out with us for the after party. We got a couple more segments and we will take your calls. But right now we will have a 5-minute intermission while we make all of that happen. So thanks very much, everybody, for being here today. If you're not hanging out for the post-game patron show, then we will see you back here on Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, thanks very much for spending the afternoon with us today. Be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.